Awesome. I will call to order tonight's February 27th, 2024 regular meeting of Town Council to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have an extended moment of silence in honor of Fire Department's honorary member, George Meekham, who recently passed.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda are proclamations or presentations, of which we have none. And then on to item 5, which is public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of Town Council with a 2-minute limit. If you wish to speak and you're in the room, we ask you to come up to the table and tell us your name and your address. And if you're on Zoom and you wish to speak, we ask you to raise your Zoom hand or press *9, and we'll alternate between the two. So we'll start in the room. If there's anyone who would like to speak, come on up.
Hi.
Everybody will have a turn.
Just a quick question, because I wasn't here 2 weeks ago.
And
I see that you.
Before you start,
Oh,
will you
yes,
officially
you're
give
right,
us your name?
sorry. George over Fish and Game Road, Tolland. Because I wasn't here a couple of meetings ago, I didn't hear anything about the ambulance, but I see that we're upgrading 2022 to 2024. Does that mean we finally got a ID number? Are they actually starting to build it?
It's actually a question that I hope that we get a little bit more information on when we get to that agenda item.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm just gonna see if there's anybody, because we just alternate, so just give me a second. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak? You can raise your Zoom hand or press *9. All right, we will go back to the room.
Thank you for the opportunity, and it's nice to see all you folks. I'm here on my own volition.
Can you just give us your name and your
Oh, I'm
address for
sorry.
the record? It's okay.
That was the next
Oh,
sentence.
sorry.
I just want you to know I'm here on my own volition.
Okay.
Francis Weekend. I worked for the town 32 years as the Tolland Senior Center Director. I'm retired 3 years. I'm here just to bring your attention to the need of an addition to our senior center. The population has grown so much that you can't believe it. The rooms are filled and they can't even do some of the programs. It's just briefly, in '88, I was given $100 to start the center. In 1998, they finally got the building. In 2008, they finished the basement because we ran out of room up top. I know we have a grant writer right now. A grant writer could write. I also know that there's a grant for a pickleball court near the center, right by the parking lot. And I hope you'd reconsider maybe using that money to get an architect to draw up plans. And then as soon as you get the okay for the building, you'd be a step ahead of the game. There's so much I could say. Believe me, I'm very passionate about that senior center. What it does for seniors, it gives them purpose. I had one woman come to me and she cried on my shoulder and she couldn't believe how beautiful and how wonderful the senior center made her. She lost her husband. She came into that center and was greeted with open arms, and she cried and she goes, "I even got a boyfriend." So it's a great place. It's such a great place. Also, this was no burden to the taxpayers. About 95% of the furnishings in the senior center right now, the seniors bought with hard work of fundraising and also donations made by a deceased member. The outside donation money and hard work, the trees that line the driveway, the cupola, the overhang, the flagpole, all done by the senior. They're just incredible people, and it's their home away from home. I hope you would reconsider that grant to begin, you know. On a side note, when I retired, I was told that these shoes would be hard to fill. Kim Kowalshin not only filled them, but she's run with them. And I also want to put in your head, she's every bit of department head material. On the perimeter of the town hall, every area has a department head, but the senior center, that definitely should be the department head. That's just my opinion, but I hope you think about that. One other thing, I did not have an assistant when I was there. And thank God Rebecca Ellert, who is the outreach caseworker, she was able to help me because her office was next to mine. I don't know what I would have done without her. I could have done a lot more with an assistant. Thank you for approving that position. Taking that a step further, it should be a full-time position. I'm just saying that. I've seen she's like a kid to me. She's worked hard. She works more hours than she is getting paid for. She is dynamite. You can't lose that kid. She's really, really good. That's just my opinion too, but I know other seniors agree with me on that. I'm a member there now. I'm one of them. I hope I'm covering everything. I just want you to know that please consider an addition to that senior center. The numbers are off the page right now. I'm blown away. And you should come and visit the senior center, see what they've done and what they do. I have to say, Brian, you were the first manager, and I've seen a lot of managers in 32 years. You're the first one to really put it on the map. He came over, I'm sure you all watch Facebook. He took pictures and he looked and stayed and watched some of the programs. I can't thank you enough for that. You've exposed to the community what that place is. And my 2 minutes are up. I could keep going. And I hope I've covered everything. Just consider the fact that we have grant money coming and a grant writer can write that building. That's what got the building up there already. Let me leave you with this one thought, and it's a quote from my mom. As you are, so once was I. As I am, so once you'll be. God bless you for all the work that you do. It's not easy. Don't forget the seniors help you get in here. So keep them in mind. I so appreciate this opportunity. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online who would like to speak? You can raise your Zoom hand or press *9. We'll continue in the room then. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
John Lappin, 168 Mountain Spring Road. Hello, Town Council. I apologize for not meeting you the other week because I did not look at the calendar ahead of time. That won't happen again. I recently sent an email to the town offices and I CC'd the entire Town Council. I received a response from Mike Wilkinson last Monday. Strangely, he removed the Town Council from the email response, so I'll be reading excerpts from this email, followed by my own thoughts on the matter. With regard to progress, Mike said, and I'm quoting, "Again, as you know, the town and our insurer, working at the direction of CT Deep, have previously done multiple actions at your property. Apex report, the catch basin work, new curbing, a new well based on CT Deep specifications, Langen report, etc." End quote. I would like to tackle this first passage. I am mindful that the town has performed several actions at my property, and while I am appreciative to an extent, none of them have fixed my contamination issue, an issue that the town has caused. I cannot begin to express my frustration and anger because this is gaslighting in an extreme. For those that might not know, gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which the abuser attempts to sow self-doubt and confusion in their victim's mind. This is exactly how I feel. Furthermore, Mike stated that it will take some, and I'm quoting, some time for Langen to pivot and develop what they believe has the best chance of success with this issue, getting quotes for the work, and then there is getting the approach and cost reviewed by our insurer. And that, quote, this would happen as soon as possible, and we were hoping for weeks, not months, to further develop this approach and get it approved. The fact that Mike is hoping for weeks and not months is too generic of a statement, period. You know how many months I've been dealing with this issue? 96 months. That is 8 years of non-potable water that I cannot drink, that is detrimental to my own body when showering in it, and that is caustic to my own internal plumbing. There have been numerous delays, the most recent being when the Langen report for 168 Mountain Spring Road was completed on January 6, 2023, and it effectively took a year to begin to move forward from that. To hear that there are no true timelines and that the best that we were all hoping for is weeks and not months is not reassuring, to say the least. The final passage from Mike states that, and I'm quoting again, the town is working with CT Deep and other stakeholders in trying to investigate multiple locations in town that have this problem to find workable solutions. But as we are realizing from the work that has been done and will be continuing, one size does not fit all, and the first recommended approach may not work once the subsurface studies are conducted. Clearly, each site presents its own complications. This seems to indicate that somehow, because the town has poisoned so many properties, and that because it is a difficult process to remediate the issue and get people potable water, that I should somehow be more understanding. Plain and simple, I am not more understanding. Besides this, the passage clearly states that one property has no bearing on another. So again, I ask, why have I been having to wait for other reports and other property issues to be addressed before my own? Langen has the bandwidth to address multiple projects across the country and even in different parts of the world. So why can they not address multiple properties in the town of Tolland simultaneously? I look forward to seeing what the actions the town plan has on next. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. We have Claudette online. Can she be given permission to participate?
Mike, can you unmute Claudette?
Yep.
Claudette, do you still want to speak?
Yes, I do. Claudette Morehouse, 89 Merlot Way. It's been a month since the big town meeting with the town and the state officials. I'm kind of curious to know if there was any further discussion between then and now. I just received the letter from Eastern Highland Health District to sign up for another round of water testing, which I think this is like the 4th round. I've had contaminated wells now for almost 6 or 7 years, and this is just kicking the can down the road, testing after testing after testing. And I don't think that there's any resolution that the town has anticipated as of yet. This has gone on way too long, and it's just, oh, well, we'll just do another round of testing. Well, it's road salt. You know it, we know it. The town needs to own it, and they need to fix it. And I totally support Sean Lappin's frustrations, because this has gone on way, way too long. There was supposed to be a door-to-door in the vineyards from town council chairperson and another a representative. I have seen nobody in my neighborhood, nobody. I even offered to go with the town council chairperson in place of the other representative. And I have not been acknowledged by such chairperson. So where do we go from here? It's just kicking the can down the road for more testing until the town gets the results that they want to make it town favorable. In the meantime, none of us can drink our water. We have plumbing issues, and this has just got to stop. I think it's taken far too long. If people would just do their job and fix this, I think everybody would be a little bit more health cautious. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the room who would like to participate? No? Anyone else on Zoom? No. Okay, we will then close public participation and move on our agenda to public hearing items, of which we have none. Then we have reports of boards and commissions responsible to council. Colleen, do you want to give us an update?
It's a little long, but, well, so I just want to point out there's some other subcommittee meeting, members here too, if I miss anything.
For the firehouse.
For the firehouse, I'm sorry. I feel like that's the only subcommittee I'm on right now. So Brian's here, Chief's here, and Lisa's on. So if I missed anything, you very please, chime in. So we had a regular meeting last week and then we had a special meeting yesterday. So Jacob and I needed more time on two larger items. One of them was 39,000 for foundation changes. They need more time, a construction company, and 25,000 for the overhead and additional 77 days. Projected end date is now May 31st instead of the March 15th. And then we approved multiple other ones. I won't go through them all because there is a whole lot. So I'll just put out there, Jacob wasn't there yesterday. I voted yes, it passed unanimously, and for the sake of Jacob, I did put it in. He asked that he voted no because the contractor could not supply documentation as requested. And I respect his vote on that. But going forward, I know it's the end of the project and staff has done an amazing job. And a lot of it is out of their control. Obviously, it's a construction problem. But Jacob and I'm gonna express the pride in the subcommittee multiple times going forward for the other two firehouses that we would like, and in contracts, all future monthly meetings, change order log from the contractor, project schedule, and any documents that support delays to keep the subcommittee cleared if we need any special meetings to nip anything like that in the bud to do that. But I think that's really it. Brian, did I miss anything? That sound good? Okay, anybody have any questions for any of us, since a lot of us are here? No? But,
I appreciate all the work that you're doing on that
okay,
and that the entire staff is doing. So thank you for your
Yeah.
leadership.
absolutely, thank you. Good.
I can give an update on the road salt task force, which, met last night. We did get an update on the start of testing in the vineyards, as well as some other testing that's happening as planned. We are working on a clarification of our charge at the request of my vice chair, and are also starting to move forward on engaging and involving community groups. Anything else from that, Brad?
From that, no, but you will be getting a correspondence from me regarding a citizen that came forward, former longtime employee of DPH, Tolland citizen, that has had the same issue with his wells, that would like to get involved in any sort of public task force or meetings or anything else like that. And he has a vast knowledge historically of the problem in town. As well as he's a former DPH worker, and has vast knowledge of the problems of softeners in general, in Connecticut, and how the process started and the problems. As we look to build some sort of infrastructure in our building permits and the Department of Health on whether, should there be a moratorium or should there be some controls on when we do a water softener or allow a water softener system? We don't allow it, but the health district does. He'll look to assist us in setting up a lot of that infrastructure as well.
Great. I know that there have been other residents who have been interested in engaging as well. So,
You'll get that correspondence probably too long. You sent it. I just wanted to add just who he is and
Yeah.
such.
thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Any questions? So we'll move on to, reports of town council liaisons. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I attended the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last night. They had, public hearings on two, issues. One was a special permit, regarding a height restriction on a barn that was proposed. And the other was, a request to amend the farm brewery, farm cidery, farm distillery, and farm winery ordinance to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages manufactured within 30 miles of the premises to be sold in the state. So that was granted, that this was at the request of, the Lemick Farm, cidery.
There was one though, right, Chris? There was one,
They're gonna,
you can sell one beer.
Two.
Or two, okay.
to, yeah, I think it's in relation to how many of their own that they're selling it. They can't just sell like,
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's some controls on
There
this.
is.
It's gonna be a matter.
right. And they also have like strict timelines on like, when they have to close and all that. So that passed, and the special permit for the barn did not, but I think, they're gonna be working with the.
Thank you. Do you have any news?
Yeah, I had a, commission with people with disabilities meeting last week. Such a great, group of advocates for people with disabilities. So they had a special guest executive director, Walter Blum, which I believe he used to be the chair of that, committee. He just went over the House Bill 5001 that has to do with special education and transition program. So that's a lot of great stuff if anybody really wants to look that up, but he talked a lot about that. And then just a quick update again on ADA accessibility issues in town. And then I just want to clarify, I thought I said it right in the minutes, for them, Brian, last week. For the sidewalk, that's year 2, correct? Or year 1? Yeah, it is year 1. That's what they put, year 1. Okay, I don't know why I thought year 2. So anyways, that's what they have. So that's really, yeah, I'm just making sure. Yep, that's all I have for that committee.
Did you have any committees that met?
I did not.
Joe, did you have any committees that met?
No, I did not. I did not attend any.
Okay. We're working on scheduling a Board of Education, leadership meeting next month. Working around everyone's schedules right now. There is a CROG policy meeting tomorrow where they're going over various legislative bills that are impacting municipalities. And I attended the Historic District Commission meeting last Wednesday. There was a COA on their agenda for solar panels, which was denied. It was a very difficult meeting to attend. And I will be continuing to engage Brian with some discussions about that group.
You lost a member as well.
We did lose a member right immediately after that meeting, yeah.
I had a conversation, with that member. Unfortunately, we lost him and, there was some consternation for sure.
Yeah. So we will, we'll see what we can do to help support that group so that maybe things can improve a little bit.
Katie, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
When you say lost member, you had a member resign
Yeah.
as a result of.
Yes, yes, yes.
How are you?
You know who he is, right? But immediately, I think the next morning,
Okay.
yeah,
I'm alive.
he's alive, yeah.
But
the
yeah,
next
but as a
meeting-
result of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was as a result of that meeting, he resigned. He was an alternate, so.
Sure.
But an active member of that group for quite some time
Mhm.
and,
Yeah.
resigned his position there. So, continue to work with that group. And I do believe that there's another COA that, for solar panels that's coming for next month too, so. There's. That's good. All right. So that's all I have. Next is starting new business. 8.1 is an introduction of Bruce Watt, our Director of the Recreation Department.
Yes, so our recreation department made a big comeback post-COVID, on a lot of things, thanks to, Colleen, our ARPA chair, and the ARPA committee and council for approving, some funding to really get a lot of our programs, going. That's not all, that Bruce does. He's here. Bruce, come on up and, have a seat. And, Bruce and I met today on something, but he's gonna give you a rundown on, darn near everything he does.
Hi,
All
Bruce.
right. Hello, good evening. Like Brian said, I'm Bruce Watt, the director of the Recreation Department. I started here back in November of 2014. So I am crossing 10 years with the department. I don't know where the rec department is because we get that sometimes. We are in the old Parker Elementary School right next to TIS, a department of 2 full-time employees, myself, and King Grimes, who is my administrative assistant. We also had just coming across about 1 year now, we had gotten a part-time recreation coordinator, which I was super psyched for. Anytime you want to make that person full-time, I'd be ecstatic. But she has done a great job in helping us also with getting some new programming going and taking over some of the workload for myself down at the department. We also consist of many seasonal part-time volunteers, one being in the seasonal office help as well, that really takes care of the lodge for me for rentals and making sure we have all the paperwork all set, staff for upcoming events at the lodge. We also consist of a recreation advisory board. It's a group of 7 passionate people of recreation who provide guidance just for where the direction of the department going and just kind of the needs of the community. And if there's any kind of issues, questions, or things that come up, I can run by and get some information from. As of responsibilities, we take care of most of the program activities here in town. We do quite a few programs for the side staff we do, so that's really to the staff and our part-time staff that do such a great job providing these programs. Not only do we program, we oversee the rental of the lodge. We schedule all the fields for natural and turf for pretty much everything but the Board of Education programming. Some of our major programs that we do run is one of our larger ones, Little Summer Camp. Last year, we were maxed out every week at 70 participants, which was great. We figured we can extend that to 80 participants this year, I'm sorry. We also were able to reestablish our after-school program, which is great. We call it the Crew, so you might hear, come join the Crew. We're down at the rec. We are 3 short of being full for our 20 kids that we can take on. One of our other major programs is the Tolland preschool. It's a state licensed preschool that our department oversees as well. We have 4 fantastic teachers that keep that program going and keeping it fresh. This upcoming season, we've seen a uptick in our registration, which is fantastic. So we've submitted some paperwork to the state to see if we can extend our program into the afternoon to accommodate a second class, because we do have enough for a second class. So we are trying to follow up on that to make sure we got the A-OK. And if we do, well, our 3-year-old program that runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'll have a morning session and an afternoon session. So it's great to see not only that program continue to thrive, but also grow well, as well as in participation. Besides programming, the lodge, scheduling the fields, I also do have administrative duties that I have to do. I oversee a budget, the recreation fund being the biggest one. We are one of the only departments here in town that I believe is almost self-sufficient. A lot of our budget is covered through our programming, programs that we cover. Some of our highlights that I thought were pretty good for this past, basically past year and a half. We were excited, like I said, that the Crew program, the after-school program started up. But we also started a kayak loaner program. It's one of the things that we heard from the community that, they'd like to see some kayaks and stuff like that. And we were fortunate enough to get a a grant from, Eastern Highland Health District, and, first it was for 6 kayaks. So we got kayaks and, some flotation devices with that. And fortunately, they had a little extra money and said, can you take another one? And we're not gonna deny another kayak, so we took on 7. So, we're looking to start that again, this upcoming spring into the summer, where, residents can give us a call, rent out, a kayak or 2 or 3. They're good for a day, unless you get them on a Thursday, then you have them for the weekend, so. You just return them back and, free of charge. It was for the people that did utilize the program, it was a great success last year. Thanks to the town manager too for, promoting that on, social media, because once that happened, we did get a lot of traction going for that program. We were also able to provide a movie night, outdoor movie night, where we did Ratatouille. And that was also through a grant, and, that was through the Harvard Foundation and Public Giving. We have now, some Mom and Me classes, Giggles and Goes and Curious Kiddos, pickleball instruction, food explorers, if you name it, we kind of got it. We're a one-stop shop from 1 year old up through adults. We even work in conjunction with the senior center to provide a day for pickleball, where the seniors can come in on Wednesday and utilize our indoor gym for open gym for pickleball. Which I'm sure you've all heard of. It's a hot topic, so. Some of the facility upgrades that we've seen, over the past couple of years, one being a big one, is at the rec center. We were fortunate enough to receive a steep grant. And the rec center got, a pretty good facelift, a well-needed facelift. We were able to redo the gym floor, which was, one of our bigger problems, because it was just, tile over, concrete. Now that we have this new floor, there's a little more give. So when we're running adult programming in there, or even any kind of youth athletic programs, the floor's got some give. It's not as hard on the joints and things of that nature. We were able to make our, doors have ADA accessibility. We were able to redo the yoga, we call it the yoga room floor, because that's where all our yoga classes take place, but we were able to put a flooring down in there as well. So, that was through a grant. The rec fund has also, allowed for some great upgrades to the town, that, didn't come from taxpayer money. It's all through our programming, the new playscape that we put down at the rec center for our preschool. The rec fund was able to fund that. We were able to redo the, preschool room, the flooring in the preschool room. We added a muscle lighting control panel at, Crandall Park, which allows, remote access to lighting over at the park. We were responsible for resurfacing the basketball court and the tennis courts back when I first started, at Crandall Park. And we also, through the Lodge Fund, was able to upgrade the heating system and add, well-needed, central air in there, right before, COVID, took place, which if you hadn't been in there before without the, central air, it could get quite warm on a hot July day. It's kind of our department in a nutshell. I like to consider us the fun department, because we get the program and do games and things of that nature. Can't say enough about the staff that we do have down there, and the part-time staff that we get yearly, and all of the volunteers. Without them, we wouldn't be as successful as we are. We really appreciate all the support that the town manager has given our department. I can kind of reiterate with Fran, it's been a long, long time since I remember even a town manager coming down to check out our preschool graduation and stuff like that. And our town manager has been more than gracious at coming down and supporting our department. So welcome to take any questions about our department.
Can I fill in some gaps that he missed?
Sure.
They're very common to our elections. And he schedules around and makes sure that we have one of our facilities is there, as well as the senior center. Both are very good with that. His building houses a lot of Chief Vitale's emergency management supplies down there as well. So it's a good little spot for us to store stuff should there be a mass incident. We found some equipment, old and dated, that we'll try to harness to get him something the rec department, the PCC to help them with logistics as well. And yeah, the Tolland Tykes thing, I really try to promote that as much as I can because they just do just such a super job with it. I couldn't be any happier with Bruce. His entire staff, I don't have one complaint. He's accommodating to community groups when they need space. We had a meeting on that today to assist somebody in town. So Bruce does an excellent job here and very happy to have him. So that's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, Colleen, go ahead.
I was just gonna speak because I'm the liaison to Bruce's committee, and he's right, it's the fun group. So it's and he's got a great group of people, volunteers, but I think I'm going on with 3 years now, Bruce, and I always speak very highly of you, I think, to Brian and everybody, and you know, it's fun to see how much your department has come along, especially with the ARPA funds, and that's really helped, and I hope that continues when that ends, and it's great to hear the class, or whatever for Brian and I, giggles and goes. So, but, yeah, so it's a really, really cute name. I love it. But anyways, I just wanted to thank you and your department and the volunteers that, like you said, especially the younger kids that work over the summer. I know they're paid, but, they're a big part of being mentors to the younger kids as well. Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Go ahead, Chris, and then we'll get to Joe.
Just wanted to thank you, Bruce, and all of your, the limited staff that you have for all that you do with not a lot and for, you know, kind of self-funding a lot of things through the programs that you run. I think that's fantastic. And, I have 2 little kids, so they will probably be enjoying a lot of your programming, in the years to come. So just want to thank you for, all the time and effort that you put in.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sure. So just want to tell Bruce that my family did take advantage of the kayak utilization over the summer, and it was great. We really enjoyed those, had a lot of fun, easy process. So I think that was a great addition to Parks and Rec, and glad you guys put that together. I hadn't heard about the movie night. So I think it'd be nice if we promoted things a little more widely on those types of activities, and hopefully you do a few more of those this summer too. It'd be great to see those come out again. And then my one question is, how often does the lodge get used every year, and what kind of events do you typically see for the lodge?
So the large majority is rented over the weekends, pretty much every weekend. We do see a little lull nowadays with, when you get the cooler weather, just I think large gatherings, sometimes inside during, you know, the flu season and things of that nature kind of lacks some people from renting, but we usually see anywhere from 100 to 130 rentals per year. Yep, and it's a vast majority between wedding receptions. You see, I would say the majority are wedding receptions, baby showers, and birthday parties.
Okay.
We see a wide range of things of that nature. So I don't know where to look when I'm talking.
No, it's okay.
But that's kind of the majority of our lodge rentals.
Okay, that's great. I was just curious to see what it's being used for. So it's interesting that a lot of wedding receptions take place there, which is
Yeah.
nice to hear. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's some maintenance for the lodge, coming up too, I believe, in the capital.
capital
I can't
plan.
remember exactly where it is, but soon, I
Yeah.
think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's outside the
Keep it, yeah.
repainting the outside of the lodge.
Yep.
Yep. Do you have a question?
Sure. Movie night was great,
Thank you.
but I think the schools did a good job maybe promoting it. I think that's where we saw it, it advertised, on one of the Facebook pages, but, summer camp is also fantastic. So we have several kids that go and look forward to it every year. So I guess my only question would be, and I'm sure a lot of parents have this question, April 1st. All right, when are we enrolling?
Registration will open for all spring and summer programs on April 1st at 8 a.m. It's Monday morning. It's not a joke, even though it's April 1st, we will be taking registration.
Sure, there'll be a lot of us waiting to do that.
Yeah, we're expecting the newsletter to come out at the end of March. Programs will be available to view on the Tolland Recreation website, registration site, a week before, so the the last week of March, you'll be able to view programming. Registration will open up April 1st at 8 AM for all
And
spring, summer programming.
a discount this year as well with
Correct.
the ARPA funding?
Yep. So, I would say all programming, is, 50% off if you're town resident.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So you need to get on like Ticketmaster or whatever.
I'll be up bright and early.
Bruce, thank you for all you do. I do want to say, I thought you missed an opportunity to put your face painted, the wonderful face painting that you had done at the last, Celebrate Tolland on the, cover of one of your, quarterly, brochures, but I understand
Last year was a little more difficult. It was so humid that
It
the paint
was.
was running.
it was, but it was still pretty awesome. So every year your face painting is always a very fun part of that. So thank you for all you do.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Bruce.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Bruce.
All right, next item on our agenda is health insurance.
Okay, so, as you know, we pay for health insurance, and we have an expert that the town hires, and that is Lockton Companies, and Seth Levine is our rep, and he's here today, along with Mike Wilkinson, who's, handles it, in-house. They work together and as well as, Superintendent Willett. I believe Seth Levine is also a Tolland resident, as well, so, he cares, but, so I'll hand it off to Mike Wilkinson.
Thanks. I thought before I hand it off to Seth, I just want to talk a little bit about E-CHIP for those new members of the council who don't know. In 2010, the state passed a law that allowed municipalities to pool together to purchase insurance. Tolland was, along with several other municipalities and Board of Ed, the first group to do that, and that started in 2012. So it's been active in Tolland for more than a decade. What that has allowed us to do is save large amounts of money over those years. And I'm not one for hyperbole, but it really has saved us millions of dollars over the years. Allows us not to be fully insured, but to be self-insured. It's something we couldn't do alone if it was just Tolland and the town of Board of Ed because we're so small. But by pooling together, our rates have been much lower to zero over those years, opposed to the average rate of at least 8 to 10% a year, or more that a fully insured plan would be. So if you compound those amounts over those years, we're talking about millions of dollars of savings. So it's been a great story for the town. And we continue to do it, and we're very happy we can. And it's been very successful. So Seth Levine works for Lockton. He's our health consultant. He helps us manage his program and prepare our renewal each year. And he usually comes to talk to you each year. This is a very good year. Last year we had a large increase for the first time in multiple years. It was about 16.42%, and Seth will speak to that a little. But this year we're back to a normal range, which is close to zero, which is a good story. So, but I'll turn it over to Seth now. And Seth, if you want also, I know you might have some charts. If you want to bring those up, you can certainly take the screen over if you'd like or not.
Thanks, Mike. I will certainly try. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you. For those that were here last year, at that time, we were talking a lot about, what was driving health insurance costs in general, and what kind of expectation can we have in the long term from being a self-funded plan. And last year, what we were talking a lot about was what were the long-term effects of COVID on, health insurance. And really what that was is we were seeing a large uptick in cancer diagnosis, as well as pregnancies, which, can both be high cost claims on the plan. And a lot of that did come from COVID. So during COVID, there was uncertainty. People were not having as many children. And that was nationwide. And then also cancer diagnosis. It's not that there was more people getting cancer. It's just that it went undiagnosed during COVID. So when we came out of COVID and more people were getting diagnosed with it, there was just more examples that were coming out. And so I thought it'd be helpful to start with, what are we seeing currently in the market? So on the medical side, we have inflators, deflators, and kind of neutral. So high cost claimants are still a concern. There's an increase in cancer diagnosis still. We're also seeing shortages in healthcare labor, which is causing burnout amongst hospital staffs, which means that they're now having to go out and hire and pay more for people to come back. There's also provider negotiations. So why this matters is typically hospital systems and provider systems are going to negotiate a 3-year deal with insurance carriers. And the past couple of years have been, inflation has been on the rise, which the contracts are not adjusted for inflation. So now that the contracts are coming out of negotiations, the hospital systems are trying to negotiate for better price points for themselves. And then there's also post-COVID, an increase in utilization of behavioral health. And that's both mental and substance abuse. So we're seeing that across, plans all across the Northeast. Some of the neutrals that are not really affecting claims, a little bit provider consolidation, that's kind of been going on for a while, but price transparency has been causing an increase in fixed costs. It's minimal, but it's still more work on the insurance carriers to get that transparency work done. And that's part of the CAA legislation. And then deflators, we have a trend towards virtual visits, which was a good thing that happened from COVID. And value-based care, which is more providers buying into the system of trying to get people the right healthcare that they need versus just trying to get as many visits as possible. But overall, in the Northeast right now, we're seeing medical trend up about 8.1%, which is the highest I've seen it in a long time. We're not sure yet when that will come down, but for now, we are trying to prepare people for, we'll call it an increase for the next year or two. And then if we move to the RX side, we're seeing in the Northeast, our book of business trends up 15.5%. That's largely due to the influx of new approvals of gene therapy medications, not necessarily in the Tolland plan, but with the pharmacogenomic drugs that are coming out. Those are, one and done drugs that are going to cure diseases versus just, masking symptoms for a while. Those are typically going to cost between $2 and $4 million per dose. And there's more and more being approved every day. Right now, there's probably, I'd say, less than 10, mostly for very rare conditions. So you probably won't see one on the Tolland plan for a very long time. But there's going to be more drugs coming out over the years that we're trying to prepare for. Also, specialty medications. There's more and more specialty medications out there. Some of them are starting to have biosimilars, which is good because that's going to drive price down a little bit. But at the same time, every time a biosimilar comes out and one of the specialty drugs loses patent, they're basically going to reconfigure their formulation of the drug a little bit and then try to get a new patent. So then there'll be a more expensive drug available. We're trying to, Cigna does a good job of trying to limit that. They do adjust their formulary twice a year to make sure that they're going to capture drugs that are not meeting the guidelines of what is good for the plan. And then the last thing is and I'm sure you've seen in the news, the diabetes medications being used for weight loss is a larger concern right now. Not necessarily in the Tolland plan, but just in general. Those medications can be $2,000 to $4,000 a month, and you need to stay on them indefinitely. So it's certainly not a light expense for the plan. Any questions there before we move forward?
No, sir.
Okay. So I like to show historical experience. I think it gives new members and old members a refresh, and for new members an idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about self-funded claims. If we're looking at the chart, we start out by showing since 2015 what the average headcount, and that's going to be the employee headcount and the member headcount. That includes dependents, the member, is on the plan. And then we show total gross claims. We show pooled claims over 175,000. So Tolland purchases stop loss insurance, which is more or less a reinsurance. So for claims that are over 175,000 on an individual, those get capped, and then the stop loss carrier pays the rest of the claim versus Tolland having to. So what that does is you pay a premium for it, but at the same time it creates smoother claims year over year, so you don't see large spikes in claims, on an annual basis. And then at the end of that chart, we like to show claims on a per employee and a per member basis, not just in total. That way you can really get an idea of what it came out to per employee and per member. So you'll see we were pretty consistent in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then we get to 21, 22, and 22, 23. And that's really where we start seeing the uptick, which was driven by large claims coming out of COVID. The good news is that we made our adjustment last year. Tolland made the adjustment last year to budget, and it has proven to be good that they did. And claims have started to even out, which is good. We're not seeing a further increase. And that's where, when you're looking at the budget, this is what drives the budget. And then just to give you a little more context on large claims and what impact it has on a group of Tolland size, because Tolland's, in the grand scheme of, the size of a municipality, Tolland's a smaller municipality. So large claim fluctuations are going to make a big difference. And you'll see going throughout the years, we're fairly consistent, average 52, a lot of years in the 40s. And then we get to the 21, 22 periods. And now we're talking 66 claimants over 25,000 in claims in 1 year, and then 61 in this past rolling 12. And again, that's also showing the uptick of cancer claims and childbirth in 21, 22. In 22, 23, it was cancer claims and heart conditions. So overall, I really like the right side of this slide. So the right side of this slide is going to show claims outside of large claimants. So anybody who had over 25,000 in claims, we remove from the experience, and just look at in the second to last column where it says total group pooled medical, RX, dental, vision claims, net of claims over 25,000. That column shows you what I call the normal claim activity. And it shows you the consistency for a long time. I mean, we're talking 8 years of consistency. And a lot of that's driven by the amount of effort that Tolland puts into promoting wellness programs. So they participate in wellness programs through Egypt, and they do put a lot of effort into it throughout the year. So they're doing a really good job at trying to keep employees healthy, and it shows in the claims. But just to give you an idea of the total impact that large claims have on a plan of Tolland size, you can see that, like for this year, 52% of claims came from 61 people. and average 49%. So a large amount of the money being spent is for large claimants. Is there any questions?
I have a question. Thank you, Seth. I'm a little confused as to this supplemental insurance for claims over 175,000 and why that isn't normalizing these large claims that you're referring to.
So it does to an extent. Really the cost is being driven by the number of large claimants, so the incidence of large claims that we have. It's not being driven by the severity, which we'd have higher severity if we didn't purchase stop loss insurance. So while I am saying that there's an impact, it's from incidence, not severity.
Okay.
If we had, so for example, if we had like say a hemophiliac on the plan, and drug costs for a hemophiliac are somewhere around $2 million a year, the budget would be artificially inflated for a long time if we didn't have stop loss. But with the stop loss, Tolland would only pay 175,000 of that claim, and then the stop loss carrier would pay the rest. So what we're trying to minimize the fluctuations from large dollar amounts, but we can't help the amount of claims that we have that hit that point.
Okay.
Other than through the wellness programs, and hopefully over a long period of time, keeping people healthier leads to better outcomes. But
Yep. Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Seth? Joe, did you have any questions? Okay. I have a few pretty, I guess, specific questions. I'm not sure if they're for Seth or for Mike, or I guess I don't know who they're for. What is our year-to-year balance in the E-chip account, and how is that determined?
Well, let me take that one.
What's that?
Go ahead, Seth.
Oh, I just said I'll let Mike take that one. I think that's more of a question. Mike.
Yeah, I don't, we'd have to get the year-to-year number. I don't have that available. So, again, if you're talking about the E-chip, it's a balance. So it fluctuates monthly, yearly. I think there is some audit that it's part of the audit, or in the audit, the whole fund, which, but again, I don't have that year-to-year number. I had emailed you what the balance was when we set the actual rates for 2025.
Yes. And can you just give us a quick overview on how the rates for 2025 were set? How does that work?
Sure. So it's done, again, E-chip, like I said, we're self-insured. So E-chip is basically an insurance company. So each year we meet with Seth and the Board of Ed and the town, and we look at the renewal and see where we are rate-wise, see what we have to budget for an increase to get our premium need. Then we look at any kind of reserves we have and anything we can do to soften the blow of the rates by using some of that reserve, usually a smaller amount, to minimize the rate increase. And we run it by Seth to make sure he feels comfortable with what we're doing to get to the best number we can. Budget wise, and then as long as he's comfortable with it, then we go forward with that rate.
Okay, so I know when you we asked a few questions. As always, those questions will be included in the minutes, as will the answers. You said, when you said the fiscal year 25 rates, you set aside the 16.5% reserve claims needed. What does that mean?
Do you want to grab that, Seth? I can explain it too, but you can go first if you want.
Sure. So it's also part of ECHIP. The members in ECHIP had agreed long ago to create stability in the plan, and part of that is having we'll call it a reserve set aside for IBNR, which is going to be your incurred but not yet recorded claims. So that's going to be when claims come in from providers, they typically, and you'll see this when you go to the doctor yourself, like you're not going to get a bill for a couple months. And so that's the process of them putting together the bill, submitting to the insurance company getting the claim and processing it accordingly. So there's typically about a 1 to 1.5 month lag in claims. And so you always keep, we'll call it 8.5 to 10.5, right? Each requires 8.5% which is equal to 1 month of claims in that reserve account, just in case you exit the self-funded plan. And then you have claims to pay your run out, because you're going to have about 1.5 months of run out should you leave. And then the other 8% is for large claim fluctuation, which is kind of why the chart that we showed makes sense, which is every so often you're going to have a year that you're not expecting. And to have that large claim fluctuation in there creates a reserve amount that you can use to pay for those claims real time during the year, because you're not making rate adjustments until after that experience has already come through.
Okay, so after reviewing what was available in the account and some sort of outlook for the next year, the decision was for a 0% rate increase to be budgeted. Is that right, Mike?
Correct.
And that leaves a cash balance of, you said, about $189,000 in the ECHIP account, which I assume is the 16.5%. Or is that in addition to the
No,
16?
that's after, that's what's left. That if you got to set aside the 16.5%, take that
Okay.
off because that has to be set aside for what Seth just mentioned.
Okay.
Then there was, so that's what's left over. So basically you wanted the balance. So I was trying to give you a balance.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And then you said the cash balance does not include the CD invested balance of $935K. What's that?
It's a CD. There's some funds in the bank account that are in a CD.
Okay. So like savings.
A certificate of deposit. Yep.
And that's almost $1 million. Why do we have $1 million in savings in our insurance plan?
I'd have to refer to Walt. I'd have to ask Walt. I don't know why there's that much in there.
Dr. Willett, can you answer that for us?
Yeah, it is part of our reserve.
Okay.
And have it, to have it generate the highest amount of interest, put it in this.
It is, sure.
And we also reinvested some things into money market accounts recently, and so we're just trying to maximize interest to continue to build upon.
Okay, but it sounds like we need to save 16.5%. And this is on top of that 16.5%, right?
Right, you're saving the IBNR 8.5%, that's a set aside.
Yep,
And the ECHIP corridor is what we call it, another 8% is set
Yeah.
aside.
right.
So that CD is outside of those set asides. And outside of the cash reserve that is also outside of that.
Okay, so why?
Well, it's been sustained for years, and it has really helped the Tolland Public Schools in the town create a reasonable and manageable insurance structure with respect to its increases. You'll notice that Mr. Levine was talking about 18% increases, 18%. We have not had such increases. So we've had the benefit for our staff and our town to not have massive increases that cause fluctuations. It's a healthy account. It also helps to have money in the reserve because as Mr. Levine pointed out, you can have pretty big fluctuations. There are very few individuals, because of the nature of illness, can generate high levels of claims that are above and beyond the stop loss. So it just helps when you have years of great fluctuation, which can happen, to make sure you have a reserve sufficient to absorb those fluctuations. And we do have that here, which is why you've got a lot of stability in our health insurance versus other places, even the state plan that have been kind of disastrous sometimes for their employees and for municipal and school entities. But we have a very healthy and strong account.
Sure, but we did see a pretty large rate increase last year. And we didn't ease into it using this savings money, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there was some offset with ARPA last year.
Yeah. With ARPA, yep.
But is that a rhetorical question? Should we ease into it? I think, again, we took the analysis of Lockton and tried to make a protective step. As he said, you saw a claim, we have all seen post-COVID, some of the claims go up because people put off things. And it's not that there is more cancer now, it's just that more is being diagnosed. And so we've seen that uptick, and that was a reaction to the uptick proactively to make sure that, the town and the school are protected from a point of view of insurance. And it did take a hit. As he had said, I think his terminology was the adjustment. We made the adjustment last year, which is, I think, an appropriate way of addressing or commenting on that. That is something, we had to take a hit and take an adjustment on. And now we're watching, at least it seems like trend is heading in the better direction. So it does help to have, have an account that can absorb major fluctuations because kind of like special education, it can be a small number of individuals that generate a high impact. And so we have to make sure we can handle the burst impact, not just the impact that happens from month to month or year to year, but when there's a burst, something very high, that we are able to absorb that. Because the alternative is, we don't have any alternatives. So if we can't handle a burst impact, there's nowhere for the town or the board to go for extra money if we can't handle it. So it's important to have enough that we can absorb any kind of fluctuation.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Speaking of the increase that we saw last year, it sounds like, and I'm probably reiterating something that was already said, but based on market projections and whatever expertise that I don't have clearly, the decision is that while last year wasn't necessarily a blip, we don't have to increase more for this year. Does that mean that the money that was put aside for insurance for fiscal year 24 is going to cover our costs for insurance, for medical needs in fiscal year 24?
And I'll say yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's good news.
Yeah, we are fully capable of handling.
Well, we hope it. Again, we're only halfway through the year, so we still have to. That's what our goal is, but
But
we're still.
Looks like it's on track.
Yeah, I mean, we have to say, Jess, we're not freaking out about where we're at.
Not freaking out. Excellent. I like not freaking out, so that sounds great.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a technical term
yeah.
in the insurance industry.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have two more questions. Where does the interest earning on the CD go? Does that just get reinvested back into the E-chip savings?
Our reserve.
into the E-chip reserve. It doesn't,
And the interest in the CD earns interest in the CD, but interest on what is outside of that goes back into our reserve.
okay, so it does stay isolated in E-chip. It
Yeah,
doesn't
and
go
to
out.
give you an idea, we're always looking for ways to maximize that. So last year we had $500 in interest. Right now we have $13,000 in interest because of how we
Interest rates.
look to reinvest that.
Okay, great. And so my second question is, since the recommendation for the next fiscal year is to keep the contribution to health insurance level, my understanding is that the Board of Ed budget is not keeping, it is a proposal that does not keep the Board of Ed contribution level, but reduces the Board of Ed contribution by $200,000. Is that right, Dr. Willett?
I think, originally the thought was to take 200,000 out of the operating budget to reinvest it from the ARPA funds that had offset it from last year. So ARPA had offset that by 200,000, and the original thought was to put that 200,000 back in that was used as an offset. And then, so there's, been some conversation around that. And I can either put a period on it here or go further.
I'm gonna ask for. I hear a lot of nuance in what you just said. And so my question, I'm interested in, I will absolutely go back to you and ask you for the details. However, does the Board of Ed budget plan to contribute the full amount that the town recommended? Or is the Board of Ed budget contributing $200,000 less than was recommended by the town?
The budget request that went over the fence to the town.
Yeah.
Has in it because the fund balance is healthy and because our position right now is higher than it was last year this time, whether you're talking about total or even median or mean for the 7 months experience. That there's a feeling that the fund balance is healthy enough that it is not necessary. So why take a budget hit of the loss of potentially 3 or 4 positions if you don't have to, if the fund balance is healthy enough so that 200 doesn't have to be reinvested. So to answer your question though, last year this time we had less in the account than we did now.
Yeah.
And so whether you're looking at mean, median, or trend, there is a feeling that because of that, because we're in a better position, generally, it's seen as a very healthy reserve, that there was conversation on the board side about that not being necessary. So the budget that was moved over to the town, at the end of the day, the town gets to decide what the board gets for a budget or not. So this is really moot if the town decides to do something, to use the board's budget accordingly. But the board was making a request really of not having to put that 200,000 back in because the trend is higher than it was last year this time. It's healthy. We have interest on it. And it wasn't seen as necessarily necessary if you're going to lose 3 or 4 more positions. Originally, the conversation was around also, I think it came up when they were considering the loss of 17 positions.
Okay.
And so this has evolved in a number of ways to be the request that was made of the town council through the adopted budget that it provided.
Okay. Is the amount that the Board of Ed contributes to health insurance a decision that is completely under the authority of the Board of Education? Like, the town council can't tell the Board of Ed how to spend their money in general. Is that generality also applied to health insurance?
It's done in partnership. I don't think it can dictate, but it's done in partnership, and each chip really has the requirements. So for instance, as long as you hit the IBNR and you're hitting the 8.5%, that each chip wants. So the 16.5%, as long as you're living up to putting your amount in that it requires, each chip has some flexibility in how it views what you're doing. And Tolland has always been more than responsible in what it's been contributing to each of as part of the collective. So, so it's a little bit more along the lines of what each elected body wants to do, but it's been in collaboration with the town that we've done it traditionally
Okay.
over time.
Thank you. So then I guess my question is in each of one at this point. If the town, whether it's the town side or the Board of Ed side, but ultimately combined, puts in $200,000 less than we did last year, are we still within all the requirements of the E-chip contracts or agreements?
We are, and if you look at overall reserve balance, the trend at this moment in time to last January is much higher than that, $200.
Okay, and part of the reason we're within the E-chip requirements, does that have anything to do with the CD that has almost $1 million in it?
Well, that's above and beyond.
Above and beyond?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
when I say it's, the overall balance reserve, what I mean is that's a positive thing, that it is multiple times higher than this 200,000 we're talking about from January right now to January last year. And it goes up and down over the years, but we're in a healthy position this year, a very strong position at this moment.
Okay. Thank you. I know that you are an expert on this, Dr. Willett, and I have asked you a tremendous amount of questions, so thank you for that. I'm wondering if we can hear directly from Seth on this, just so we hear from our E-chip advisor. Seth, can you answer the same question? If the town, whether it's through the town individually or the Board of Ed, if we as a town contribute $200,000 to E-chip less than we did last year, are we still meeting all the E-chip requirements?
So I guess what I'll say is I'm technically not really allowed to weigh in on that, but I'll tell you my thoughts on it. So I guess, crystal ball aside, right now we're seeing so far for this year, I would call it a healthy leveling out, which means that large claims are starting to come down. And we've seen that for, we'll call it a consistent 4-month period, which is good. I would say that there's still room for it to go up on seasonality, but as far as the account goes, it sounds like it's in a healthier position. I don't have access to all the data on the account that everyone else does, but it sounded like it's in a healthy position. And if we're covering reserves and claim fluctuation, or IBNR and claim fluctuation, at that point, I've more or less, satisfied, my requirements. That being said, as an insurance person, I'm always going to be conservative. And so some of that money left in the account, when we talk about overall liability of Tolland, overall liability of Tolland does not stop at a certain number. So if you have, say that large claim number goes from 61 to 80, there's nothing stopping Tolland from having to pay claims other than claims over 175,000 because we have the stop loss there. But there's no stop loss in place that says you'll pay a maximum of 8 million in total for the year. So where I always worry is, as a small town, where are the funds going to come from should we have one of those years that we don't expect? And so there's always going to be that conservatism for me. But if you're asking me in one particular year, is the 200,000 going to make or break the account? The answer is I can't weigh in, but probably not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think Joe has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. That was my last question for now. Joe, go ahead.
Let me unmute there for a second. So, as a new member, I'm still playing a little bit of catch up here as to these funds and how this process works from the insurance perspective. But from what I initially heard, it sounds like in order to keep, we're not doing any kind of an increase. So there's no increase to the employees for healthcare, and that's being funded from what I'd heard is excess funds that we had in this E-chip account that will now be utilized to keep the insurance levels even, and still maintain that 16+% reserve that the E-CHIP fund requires. So we are taking away some of that savings other than the CD, right? Or am I misunderstanding that?
That's true, other than, this- yeah.
So to keep a 0%, we are utilizing savings in that E-CHIP account.
We are. One thing to keep in mind though too, is that makes sense to do. You don't want this to get too high. Otherwise, the questions at the beginning were why? And that would be the same question that unions would ask and other people would ask, you know, they would look at it as, this is where our money's going, this is ours. And so, you know, it's really not that it's through a lot of hard work in the town and the board to get it there, but, you don't want it to get massively high. You also don't want it to be terribly low. So yes, outside and beyond the CD, we're taking that hit and you even take more based on what we have, but you know, it's good to be balanced about that and to do it in partnership. The other thing, Spurgeon is our, E-CHIP has its own financial, kind of its own consultant, Joe Spurgeon. And so Seth does an amazing job for Tolland and for the board and the town council. But he's advising for board and town council, and Spurgeon advises for E-CHIP. So it's a little bit different, but just to make it, just give you an idea.
Okay, and it
Katie, can I
sounded
just
like,
jump? Oh, sorry.
yeah, please
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Joe. No, you go ahead, Joe.
So it sounds like from your previous comment, though, that we are taking the savings down to the point where we're only left with the 16+% to cover the E-CHIP minimum requirement. And then really the only savings we have is that, which is a lot, which is the 900+ K in the CD. So if anything happens in the subsequent year that we no longer have any sort of a cushion, and we're talking about, and I don't fully understand this 200,000 that's being floated around, but if we're reducing what we anticipate the budget should be by this $200,000, then we are going to eat into that 900,000 if there's anything that goes beyond 200,000 less than we budgeted. Am I understanding that correctly?
We wouldn't be depleting the reserve that we have outside of the CD. There would still be remaining reserve outside of the CD, even if you didn't put the 200.
When you say reserve, though, I thought I understood that we're using some of that reserve. We're using all the reserve except for the 16% that E-CHIP requires us to maintain.
We're not using all the reserve outside of the 16%.
Okay, so go ahead.
Outside of the 16% and outside of the CD. It doesn't mean that we should burn through all of it by any means. It just means that, no, we aren't using the entire reserve outside of that.
Okay, so how much reserve outside of that 16% will we have left even after the $200,000 reduction?
Well, in one scenario, if you're going without the $200,000 reduction, you're using 370. I think the other scenario, you're using 570. Either way, you're going to still have above a plus balance in the reserve beyond the amount that's in the CD. So you're probably going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars, and this is a projection above and beyond that. Outside of the CD, that is in the regular reserve that's in a money market account. So you still have quite a healthy reserve outside of it, even if you do use the other 200,000. Even where we are right now, when you're looking at the trend that we're having, you know, the balance right now for this year at this time in January is significantly higher than where the balance was last year. And I think Mr. Levine had a really good point about trend. But when you think about, and you're looking about 80, I think he had used the number 80. The most and the median of the number of people that have had those kinds of things are in the 40s to 52, roughly. The chances you'd ever get up to 80, although it could be a calamity year, are really low. So, you know, it's not that, I think everything, that we're being advised is the right thing. I think it's really important. We also have to keep in mind the reason why I think there was a feeling that there's some play here, there's something to work with, is because you have a reasonably healthy reserve that could take that $200,000 hit, and there'll still be a reserve after that outside of the CD. And that's the piece. The cash reserve, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on it, but, we're looking at where you are right now, we still have some left at the end of the year.
So some above the 16%, excluding the 900K in the CD, and eating away 200,000 to reserve, we're still going to have a decent amount of money sitting there in excess.
Probably, yeah, because what we're, proposing to input into the account is more than we are generally taking out of it. So, I would say that you're either gonna end in a neutral situation close to where we are now, or probably a little better off. We've just had a lot of, you have a lot of things that are positive in how this is being handled right now, including much more interest than we've ever gotten in the past because of how we have reinvested these funds. So it's just that it does not look like that 200,000 is going to, make or break things. And that's why the board had, wondered if this was a possibility.
So what I'm hearing is we basically over budgeted the past few years. And the current budget before the $200,000 reduction sounds like it also had a little bit of cushion built into it.
Well, I think we've we've reasonably and logically invested the money over the last few years rather than letting it sit. So, for instance, it might be politically palatable to let something sit and not put it in CDs and not put it in money markets. And, that way we would be saying, oh, sure, we're breaking even all the time, but you don't want us to break even all the time. You want us to have an extremely healthy account. You want us to think logically and tactically. You want us to invest it in money markets. You want us to put it in CDs. So that if we ever had to liquidate because of some terrible, terrible year where you reached a, massively outlier, like 81 people above your stop loss, we could absorb it. But, what we're doing is making sure you're never in that situation, while at the same time giving you massive flexibility year to year with what you do with insurance. And it's because of the awesome work of the town and people like Seth, Lean and even the people at Egypt, that you have such a healthy account that's well invested and, well managed, that you can absorb hits and take, hard years like this. There's a reason why your insurance rate outside of what we're doing is 18%, and you're able to offer better rates. That helps when you have bargaining units that are getting compensated lower than the average, because we're not hitting them with massive 18% increases in insurance. Otherwise, you'd see even more attrition in your workforce. So it's really all credit to the great work that's being done here from Seth and others in the town, that we are where we are.
Yeah, I fully agree. You have to invest this money. It would be foolish to leave it in a non-interest bearing account. And I think it's very helpful too that we're offering employees insurance without an increase in their costs, which is a tremendous benefit in light of what's going on in the private sector, I would say. So that's good. But we just want to make sure our budgets are realistic, and that we do keep a fair cushion in spite of the 900,000, which is still pretty hefty.
Joe,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Let me just jump in, and I also want to give credit to Walt, because for those who don't know, Walt is also the chairman of the executive committee for ECHIP. So he's one of the people that spearheads that. We do such a great job. So one of the things we do every year, Joe, and we've done it for a while, is we set a rate, but we're always looking beyond that. If at some point between the time we set the rate and the budget's finalized, is there any kind of adjustment we could make? So it's usually, that's a discussion that happens. Yeah, and it's happened in previous years where, we might be, and I'm just throwing numbers out there, but we might be at 4%, and then a month or two later, we usually discuss that and, oh, can we, based on what's happened since then, could we go down to 2%? So that's always an internal discussion. The only thing different a little this year, and we talked about it, we met with Walt last week, is we noticed this $200,000 in the Board of Ed budget. So that's kind of a decision they kind of made in their budget, which is fine. And we're discussing it now, but that's kind of in the past how we would generally do it. And to make sure we're all on board on where we want to be. And we feel comfortable with what the rate is, what amount of reserve we're using to get there. So that it can minimize the budget impact, which is a big portion of obviously the Board of Ed budget and the town budget is health insurance.
Right. That, and then it was mentioned, and I didn't quite follow that either, there was ARPA money that was used last year to assist in the insurance payments?
Lisa, do you want to jump in and mention that, or?
Yes, last year during the budget process, in order to give the Board of Education a little more money in their budget, the town council voted to use $200,000 of ARPA money to offset their amount that they would have had to contribute to ECHIP for this fiscal year by $200,000. So they were able to reduce what they would have had to contribute for health insurance last year and use that money elsewhere within their budget. And the 200,000 went into the ECHIP account from ARPA to fund their expenses.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like, I mean, I guess it's a subject to debate here, but it sounds like the cushion in the ECHIP fund or the health fund went up by 200,000 last year because it used the ARPA funds, and now we're really using that cushion this year. Is that a fair statement?
More like the amount we are contributing was reduced by the amount of 200,000. So the question was, do we need to put that 200,000 back in to balance it out? And the performance has been reasonably good such that there would be a question about whether it was necessary this year to do that. So it did. I also look at it as, it's a collective. So anytime we offset something like that, it has a mutual benefit, because we're in this together, town and board are in it together. And there's a mutual benefit to the town and the board being in it together. So any offset helps everybody, but so it was, instead of, funding it at X, it's X minus 200. So that, the thought was, well, put the 200 back this year, but if it's trending well, or if the reserve balance is healthy enough that you don't need to do that, then the question on the board side was, well, do we have to reduce 3 or 4 more people, to put this back when it looks like it isn't necessary to balance that out from the point of view of the health of the account right now, its current status.
Okay, so the budget that was presented to the town manager then reduces the expense, the healthcare expense coming out of the board's side by 200,000. Is that correct?
That is correct. Originally, it was budgeted to put back, and then the Board of Ed adopted budget, which is really a suggestion to the town manager. And for all intents and purposes, that's ultimately what it is. It's to the council too. I mean, it's not just the manager. I think there's been a lot of fairness, given to the board over the last year or two, and I appreciate it. But essentially, it's a recommendation. An adopted budget goes to the town, and the town council decides what do we want to allocate to it. So the board hoped that instead of having to have this $200,000 out of its operating budget to offset that, since it's healthy, that it decided that it would, make the suggestion through its adopted budget that not be the case, and lower the budget request accordingly, which is what it did. It also had other considerations in there too, but not pertaining to this.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Dr. Willett.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Yep, Colleen, you're next.
I have a bunch of questions and statements, but that was Thank you, Joe, for bringing up the ARPA thing. I was a big part of the ARPA thing last year, and Brian knows how upset I was at the beginning of him even asking to use the ARPA funds for the Board of Ed, right, Brian?
Yep.
There's a lot, from there, and with the 200,000, I thought the ARPA subcommittee and the council at the time was pretty generous in using that money to help for an operating expense for the Board of Ed. So it's frustrating to hear that the reason that 200K is being reduced is because of the ARPA money. That's what it sounds like to me. So as you can tell in my voice, that is not what we talked about last year. And that was the concern of Lou, and Tammy and, probably someone else, but and myself. I took a big leap of faith on it. I had a lot of tears with Brian over it, arguing, and we say we're gonna cut positions because of the 200K. I hate to hear that, but that was the entire reason why people were concerned that it was gonna be used in a different way for the future years. The other question, if I heard right, there's $1 million over, is that correct? That you have another $1 million?
Are you talking?
I'm asking you, yeah.
That we have.
I
Well,
thought I
first
heard
of all,
that.
to make the comment, just to talk about what you're talking about. You know, if you had $100 and you had to buy textbooks for your kid, and, somebody gave you 20 so that you only had to spend 80, but you made in interest in other things, enough to make up that 100 the next year, you wouldn't have to reinvest that 20 to be able to buy the same thing, because you've earned enough so that you had a healthy account. So you didn't have to put 20 back from the 20 you took out from the previous year. What happened was, if that ARPA thing was really gonna be considered just a one-time thing, they were given the board ultimately that was gonna, if there was gonna be no consideration to what trend would be provided, then you were just damning them to 3 or 4 more cuts this year.
But
So if you're looking at it from a flexibility point of view, if you have a healthy account that will more than cover for that, why should they have to reduce 3 or 4 positions now if your intention was to prevent them from reducing 3 or 4 positions last year? Why would that intention be different?
But that was why we were doing it for a one-time reason.
Right, but then you would have just reduced them this year. If you have an opportunity,
So I guess that's the
if you
plan.
have the opportunity, because the account is healthy, not to have to do that, what would the logic be by doing it this year?
I guess it wasn't clearly stated that way
Yeah, and I don't-
when it was presented to the council or to the ARPA committee.
But it's just that you've got trend that makes that not necessary. So if we were gonna impose something that because, with trend is not necessary, it just doesn't seem like there'd be logic there. So again, it's not the adversary, the board's not the adversary of the council, you're in partnership. It shouldn't be that, hey, you know what, even with better trend, and even if you can avoid this impact, damn it, you're gonna do this and face that impact anyway. That goes against the spirit of what you were doing last year. And I'm not sure everybody understood that piece of it, that would have to be reinvested. Perhaps they did, perhaps they didn't. You have a new board here right now who's encountering a situation where you would have to reduce 3 or 4 more people if that impact isn't mitigated, and you have trends to be able to mitigate it. So the question is, why impose something on them if there's an opportunity not to? And as far as $1 million, we having $1 million, I don't know who you're.
I thought I heard Seth say something about there was $1 million or something.
Yeah, you have it's healthy enough that you have a set aside of a CD that has, money in it that is close to that, but that's great. That's because the board and the town have managed it so well. You have such great partnership between your board and your town that it is so well managed that you have the ability to sustain some of these fluctuations. In a year when you have some of the most massive transportation increase that your district has ever faced, you have an opportunity to offset.
So I guess another question I've heard or something, I don't know, that did the Board of Ed go with the higher risk with the insurance? I've heard that thrown around that there were 3 choices or options, and that was the Board of Ed went with the higher one, higher risk.
There were 3 options. The difference between option, let's say 2 and 3 was 200,000, which is what you're talking about here. Whether that was reinvested or not was really the difference between option 2 and option 3. The thing is, try to think of this as a collective. The board contributes the board has many, many more employees than the town does. The board is a far larger structure from the standpoint of human resources. So this is really overall a big balancing act, and the board contributes the vast majority of this to this account. The board contributes the lion's share of this to this account. So it's within the board's, that's really where the fluctuations would come most massively would be from the board itself, because it is actually the biggest contributor. And despite that it is a, generally mid to small sized town, in Egypt, we're one of the biggest contributors. So you're extremely healthy, and the board sustains a lot so that the town and the board can have an equally beneficial relationship. So it's not that the board is taking advantage of the council or the town in any way. It is a beautiful partnership that allows for a great balance to make this self-funding possible.
But I thought I heard Council Newcheck say there were a number of options provided to the board in terms of what number they should contribute each year. And did the board choose to go with the high risk option?
Well, the board, again, the high risk option, that is not a term that was ever used in this situation. There was no such option called high risk, low risk. There are options provided, but they were iterations of how much are we going to use of reserve or not use of reserve. There was no high risk option.
Thank you. Did I answer your question, Helen?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's just not how I remember it. Well, I love you, or Dr. Willett, I love you. But that is not how I remember it. And it's just, again, very frustrating that we use $200,000 for an operating expense now. That's not what that money, we could have used it on a capital item that, what the real intention of it, so. Might disagree with a lot of people online and here, but that is, we live in it for a couple months over it. It doesn't sit well with me.
And I apologize. I don't take it as anything. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but I would say the 200 offset you gave helped prevent issues last year, and the trend that, they can offset that from the reserves that you have, healthy in Egypt would make it so that they don't have to sustain that negative impact now. So it's just the intention of last year of not wanting them to sustain that negative impact, not wanting, the school system to sustain that negative impact carries over to now, just because the reserve is healthy enough that it doesn't have to. It's unnecessary.
I gotta pipe in here because I can understand Colleen's concern, and it sounds like.
Joe, I'm sorry, hold on one second. Colleen still has the floor, and I want to make sure everybody has a chance to answer questions. So are you all set?
Yeah, I have a couple other questions and I'll move on. Thank you, Dr. Willett, for your view on it. Obviously, everybody has a different view, and I just would actually, honestly, again, never came to Arbor, but anyways. For this particular reason. But I did go back to what you said earlier. Actually, I brought it up last week. I know this is one of the shared services I asked during the meeting when that came up, which is great. It does help the town a lot, and I'm glad that the numbers are getting better going forward. And I think that's really all I have. I write messy questions or comments all over. I think, Katie, you asked a lot of the questions that I asked, so.
Okay.
Which I think, that was another question. So a question on a question. I thought I heard you earlier saying you submitted questions or you sent questions. I didn't see any questions.
I thought I sent them back to you, but if not, they will be included in the
Okay.
packet.
Perfect. I just went through it real quick and I'm like, I know you're really good about that.
That's my fault.
No,
If I
you're
didn't
really
send it
good at
back
it. So
to
I
you,
was just,
I'm sorry.
Getting a lot of, well, we're all getting a lot of.
Yes.
But all right, that's fine.
Yeah, we actually, for the each of ones, we went over them all verbally, but they will be in the packet.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Thank you, Katie.
All right. Jen, did you have a chance to ask questions? Did you want to ask questions?
No, I won't. I'm trying to understand this whole thing. And I think I got it now, but I guess just to clarify, you know, whatever was done last year with ARPA funding or however it was done, it was not something that we could foresee that this year we'd have this overage. Is that correct?
Yeah, but
I can probably take that one. So like during the budgeting process, the eChip bank account is always a point in time. And so we're setting a budget far in advance of the actual, policy year in which the claims are going to actually happen. So what we're looking to do is we're using actuarial projections, and then the reserves that are in there are being used more or less to offset some of the actuarial trend that's in there and have a little bit more positive outlook on it. So we won't know at any point in time, how that's going to end up for the year. So it was all done in good faith. When we were talking last year, the eChip account was not in a healthy position, and it was not known that that was going to get back to healthy in necessarily in this policy year. We've just started to see some smoothing out of claims now that is helping it out.
So now that we know that this year we're already in a better position, the effort to try to reduce the amount we're putting in is just based off of the fact that we now know it's not necessary to put so much in. I guess that question was not even very clear. We couldn't foresee what was going to happen this year with the money. We ended up with an overage. So we're trying to rectify that by not putting as much going in now, correct?
well, yeah, I would not define it as an overage per se, as much as you just have a healthy trend right now. So you have a healthy reserve account that could more than absorb the impact of that 200,000. And, in terms of, bad or good, I think Mr. Levine would probably agree that eChip's, and Tolland's management of it with the CD and the reserve that we have, even if you have fluctuations from year to year, Tolland is probably one of the most responsible, if not, and has some of the best management of it, and some of the healthiest accounts that, one could have in eChip with CD and additional reserves. So even last year, with there being the fluctuations we faced, Tolland was still, able to take that. And this year you have, a situation where the trend at the moment shows a healthy reserve. And so, you can utilize more of that reserve without taking on massive risk is the point. So it's not an overage as much as you have a really healthy reserve. So the question the board had was given that being the case, it reduced its budget by 200,000, not putting it in there because it considered the reserve healthy enough to be able to absorb that without great risk to the entire entity.
So it's not necessary to put the 200,000 in.
You're not taking massive risk by not putting the 200,000 in.
And was 200,000 a specific number for a reason, or is that just, how did that number come about?
It's the money that the board had set aside to put back into the eChip account that then looking at the trend and health of the account said, why are we gonna do this if we're gonna lose 3 or 4 staff when the account is robust and healthy? Now, on the other side, this is ultimately, anything the board hands over is ultimately a recommendation to the council because you control the purse strings. So you can decide whether you feel like that was, logical or not based on whatever it is you provide as a percentage. But the thinking around it was that because it is so healthy, why lose 3 or 4 positions to put that back? And I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with anybody as much as just trying to explain where the thinking is on all of this and the processes.
Okay. Do you have a question? Let's go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Willett, sorry, I'm not super familiar with health insurance. When you say trends, does that refer to like the claims that we're expected to be paying out this year, or is it like our investments? Like what are we?
Well, so there's trend can be used towards a number of things.
Okay.
In this case, we could say trend, based on the months that we've had so far for this year.
Okay,
So for instance, if you want to talk trend, based on the months so far that we've had this year, we're trending, down from January of last year in terms of claims by, more than 100,000. The median trend from fiscal year 23 to 24, July to January, is about $150,000 to $160,000 lower. And that's your median of all the months from, in the beginning of this year through January, right? The mean of the trend fiscal year to 23 to fiscal year 24, July to January is about 100,000 lower. Like everything is trending down while the amount we're putting in is generally same or higher. So the amount your total amount, for instance, overall reserve balance is about $583,000 higher right now, January now, than it was January last year. So if it's $583,000 higher, now this can fluctuate massively. To Mr. Levine's point, it can go up and down if you have a lot of cancer, high claim. But the question is, if you had a mode to median mean of about 46 to 52, is it going to jump to 80? And are you really going to lose all the millions out of your CD and everything? If the January to January trend fiscal year 23 to 24 is $583,000 high, $200,000 is not going to destroy you to do that. And that's, again, the board was dealing with a conversation about 17 potential reductions when this all started. They were trying to find a way to not massively damage your school system while, looking at what looked like perhaps a logical move there is, well, whether you got 200 or not last year, you have a strong reserve balance. Why eliminate these staff when it doesn't look like that's necessary for the purpose of keeping this healthy?
Okay, so I understand what you're saying for this year, given the trends and all that. But so last year, the amount of money that went into each of, whether it's the 200,000 or, whatever that total amount was that what it was needed at that time, given the trends then, or given the projection that we had at that point? So
based on projected trend,
okay,
what it was, and then you put it in. And
right.
then you have a trend that's a little better, meaning you're getting a little lower claims than you would otherwise, then some of that would end up going back into your reserve at the end. So you can never tell, through a crystal ball once again, but the question is, would that make such a difference that it would throw everything off? And given that the board is the biggest contributor to this by far, probably even the stabilizing element of this, that, in this particular case, with this particular issue, in this particular time, not to be done forever and ever, because that's, that wouldn't be logical to do it forever and ever. But right now, that was thrown over the fence as a consideration. Listen, the board would like to not put that back in because it doesn't want to lose 3 or 4 positions to do it. And it looks like we can do that without meaningfully hurting this or affecting it in any way.
So does the amount that goes into each every year fluctuate based on the trends? Okay, so just to be clear, whatever amount of total money went into each of last year was what we thought was like fiscally prudent, what needed to be done given the trends at that point. And you're just saying, or, we're hearing that the trends are different now. And so the amount that needs to go into each year will fluctuate.
Yeah, they're better than last year, not, and the year before it was a little better than this, but it goes up and down.
Yep.
And so it's about using what's at your disposal. If you're bleeding and you have something to wrap it with, you wrap it. And, this year you're kind of bleeding a little bit. You haven't been facing a loss of 17 positions, in a long time. And so there was a lot of thinking around from the board side and it will be soon on the town side. And it has been about how not to bleed out on this, to find a way to minimize the impact. And do so in a way that doesn't mean, really compromise anything. And that's what that thinking was there.
Thank you.
And essentially, I do work with the town in collaboration on this, so, we all try to come together to make a determination, and, the board is an elected body that looks at its budget and what it wants to do, and this was one of the things that it thought it would, consider.
Thank you. Joe, thank you very much for your patience. Did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to jump out of line there. I was just trying to, while I still had my thought going in what Colleen had been talking about. I can understand Colleen's frustration. I obviously wasn't on the town council last year, but if the impression the town council got was that 200,000 was needed, otherwise 3 to 4 positions were going to could potentially be lost. It's kind of irritating to hear that how loosely and easily the whole we're going to lose positions if we don't get this $200,000, especially 3 or 4 positions, which is a high number considering $200,000. Those are people making $40,000 a year when you take into account employer payroll costs and benefits and everything else like that. What positions are those? And if those positions were so critical, if you didn't get the $200,000, you could have easily tapped into the remaining cushion that's in the E-chip fund, whether it's, withdrawing early out of the CD, the 900,000 CD, to save those people their jobs. So we have to stop, just throwing around we're losing positions routine because it gets popular votes, or it gets people's attention when you mention lack of positions are going to get lost. And it doesn't sound like that was in fact the case. So I can understand Colleen's frustration when I hear things like that, and it loses credibility if every time something doesn't happen, it means positions get cut. So I'd like to see that change and not be utilized so easily. My only comment.
Thank you, Joe. Go ahead,
Katie, can I
Colleen.
just mention something? Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you mind waiting?
No, no, absolutely not.
Go ahead, Mike.
Fine.
No, I just wanted to agree with what Walt said. There was a term about high risk scenarios, and we don't entertain high risk scenarios. We just look at things that we feel comfortable with. So I just wanted to agree with him that, that's not a term we ever use or look at. We don't address high risk, because again, with this fund, if we run out of money and we don't have money to pay claims, we don't have money to pay the claims. So we're very cognizant of that, and we try to be fiscally prudent. So we don't address or really go into high risk scenarios. That's not something we'd ever look at. And Walt, so I wanted to agree with Walt on that.
Thank you.
I can answer a few things.
Well, let's see if Colleen has more
No,
questions.
you can
Oh,
answer
go
it.
ahead.
Well, it's fresh. That's
Go
all.
ahead.
$200,000, roughly $66,000 is, if you're saying 3 positions, most teachers, are in an area where, they start at about 52 and they go up into the 90s. 66,000 is reasonably one person if you wanted to even be that conservative about it. So that covers
Where's
at least-
employee benefits? Where's employee benefits, Walt? And that's 66,000. You're talking gross pay.
They don't
So
all-
it's
They don't all take
200,000 doesn't cover 3 people.
Well, you could, yeah, because you're bumping the lowest, you're also bumping the lowest people, and it could cover 3 people. And if you look at the budget, the Q&A document, I forget what's in the 70s somewhere, it does talk about the positions that were lost. And just because a lost position, if somebody retires and that person goes into a retirement or bumps in, there's still a lost position there. It's still a loss of a program like team leadership or something like that. Nothing that has been stated is actually not true about what's gone. If you just look at the Q&A document, it will illustrate kind of the difference there.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Colleen, sounds like you're up.
Okay, so I went back and I looked at the ARPA minutes for last year, so I just want to read what we discussed. Lisa Hancock noted that the initial request was about 1.2 million to stabilize the E-chip insurance account and to make sure we are meeting and require the E-chip policy reserves. Vice Chair Nuccio says she is disappointed in receiving this request. She is concerned that this request for a one-time revenue used for ongoing operating expenditures. Lisa Hancock clarified the reason behind the recommendation. She concurs that one-time revenue is not for use for ongoing operating expenditures. However, the recommendation is being made with the hopes of using this one-time revenue for trends to projected insurance costs to possibly to be somewhat inflated due to the impact of COVID pandemic. And that's what was talked about.
Yeah.
So again, it's not that I want anybody eliminated. It's just how it came about. And I feel like, I don't know, I don't want to say what else, but thank you, Joe, for understanding pretty quickly. And, I agree. I don't agree with all of what you said, Joe, but I just feel like, I don't know. I'm gonna stay quiet.
Okay.
The ARPA funds you contributed, the board's not coming asking for another 200,000 from you. It's not asking you to in perpetuity fund another 200,000. That was a one-time thing the town council did, and it's not being asked to do the same thing again. This is simply saying that there is such good You know, there was such good performance, there was such a healthy reserve that there is no need to put 200,000 back into it. It's not asking the town for 200,000 more, and it's not asking for it in perpetuity. So it's not asking the town council to do anything that it didn't say it would do or isn't comfortable having done.
Thank you. For a second time, go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. So, I hear what you're saying about positions and I get that you're trying to, you know, save as many staff as possible, the budget that you're given, and I think that's great. But is it fair to say, like, this, to me, this comes down to what funding you all felt was needed at each at the time last year and then at the time this year, and that fluctuates, right? Okay. So was it,
By trend, it's not asking the council for anything additional.
and the money that was given last year, that was based on the trends, thinking that that's what was needed to go, okay?
And even the money that this offset will have no impact on the town's bottom line from the point of view of the budget you pass. Zero. It's not coming out of your operating expense at all. So it's not asking the town for another 200,000. It's taking the one that you gave it, which is gracious of you not to let those positions be lost last year, but it's not asking you for another 200 this year. And it's not asking in perpetuity, and it has no impact on your bottom line.
Jen, do you have any more questions?
Nothing.
The 2-year trend from the council on discussing ECHIP is very robust. And I honestly, I don't think it's over for this year. Mike, I'd like to have an opportunity to speak with you in the next week or so to see if we can put together, to see if I can request some numbers that could come to the council so that we can have a little bit more information. After our conversations last year, I was able to access a lot of numbers regarding ECHIP that were not provided again this year, and I get that they were a special request last year, so I apologize, that's not critical, but I think that this conversation needs to have a lot more context than we currently have, and I think we're going to need to continue this conversation, as much fun as that sounds. I think this conversation isn't over, and we need some more information in order to finish it. So if no one objects, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, knowing that this is going on our next agenda as well. And we're gonna need some more context in order to do that. So thank you very much, Seth. As always, you gave us a lot of good information. Thank you, Mike, for all the information you provided. It is amazing how knowledgeable you guys are on this. And thank you to Dr. Willett and Lisa for all the things you do quietly behind the scenes here, because I know it's quite prolific. So thank you all very much for that.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Seth. Thank you, Seth.
Welcome.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 8.3 on the agenda, which is a resolution to approve the transfer of funds in the amount of $10,826 from the ambulance reserve fund to supplement the purchase of an ambulance chassis. Did I pronounce it right? How'd I do?
I give you an A+.
All right,
But I don't know.
but the chief left us. So that's all good news. We were having such a robust conversation that we ran him out. Awesome. Do you want us to jump on to the next thing? So we'll temporarily pass this. We'll pass this item temporarily and come back to it. The next item on our agenda is appointments to vacancies on various municipal boards and commissions. And I understand there might be, in addition to our agenda here, because we have one recommendation for Board of Assessment Appeals, but I believe that our vetting committee would like to add 2 additional people to that appointment. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, that's right, Katie. So Diane Clokey is currently on our agenda for the 4-year position on the Board of Assessment Appeals. And Joe and I have been working with our assessor and others who have been doing a great job trying to get our BOA up to staff because they need to have meetings next month to deal with the assessment appeals. So we were able to get Justin Hickey that we'd like to add to the agenda, approved for a 2-year slot. And then Mark Mitchell approved as an alternate for that board. And then there would only be 1 vacant alternate position. So that would give them the ability to move forward. And the only reason we'd like to do it now is because they need to set their meetings as soon as possible for their March hearings.
So then I think that we look for then a motion to add to item 8.4. I'm sorry, Mr. Hickey's first name, Justin Hickey for a 2-year position and
Mark Mitchell for the alternate.
Mark Mitchell for the alternate. Is there a motion to make that change on our agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Colleen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Chris. Any other comments before we make a vote on, we're not actually making the appointment now, we're just changing our agenda right now.
I'll do that.
Okay, so we'll just do a quick roll call vote. Joe, do you wanna vote first? Sorry.
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. So our agenda is adjusted to add Mr. Hickey and Mr. Mitchell to the appointment for various positions on Board of Assessment Appeals. Do you have anything else you want to add about these, any discussion about these before we make a motion to vote? Want to talk now?
No, I was gonna say, thank you, Chris, and I believe the town manager also helped, and Joe, and to really reboot this committee, I think was much needed to,
The town committees as well.
and the town committee,
Yeah,
thank you
and
for
Sarah.
that. And yeah, so everybody involved. Because it's an important committee and you can't really do, if I understand right, you can't do business without this committee.
Yeah.
So just, I want to thank you all that was involved.
Thank you.
And the only other thing I want to add is that all 3 of the individuals spoke with our assessor, and the assessor thought they'd be great fits. We also worked with him, so I want to thank him too for his efforts.
Anything else, Joe? Good?
Not, I convey Brian's message about Sarah Beth. She's a tremendous help and keeps us very well organized. So really appreciate her.
Thank you, Joe.
So then is there a motion to approve the 3 appointments to the Board of Assessment Appeals for those various seats on Board of Assessment Appeals? Thank you, Chris.
I'll second.
Second by Jen. All right, so we're gonna do any more discussion before we vote? No, good. Okay, Joe.
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
I'm also a yes, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. We did pass item 8.3 temporarily. We can now come back to it, since we now have Chief Lightowl in the room. Chief, no, sorry, we waited for you. Is there any introduction you want to make, Brian, before Chief sits down or?
Yeah, just, this has to do with an ambulance we've been waiting since before I got here, to get, and that there's a national shortage. No, thank you. A national shortage on ambulances, and it's been quite an arduous process, and it's been years in the making, and hence kind of brings us to where we are. Go ahead, Chief Lightowl, thank you for sitting through a couple hours of excitement to be here for this.
All good. Please, if you want to ask dates, ask me dates, but if you go back to dates, I'm gonna be all over the place because this goes back to pretty much July of 2021 when we first came, which is our normal capital budget. The only thing we did differently the year after is we bumped it up in the capital budget to order the 2nd ambulance. Because back then we were starting to face the COVID, the prices back then, percentages were going up 5 to 7% every 6 months, if not faster. Typically prices are 2 to 3% a year. So where we are now is when we had placed our order for the purchase order back in 2021, that was for a 2021 chassis. No VIN numbers, we went back and forth. Now we're at 2024. As of my email to the boss today, because I've been pushing, and believe me, from a community standpoint, I've dealt with every Congress legislations. We've tried to do everything all across the board. I even tried to get Joe Courtney's office several different times involved, as far as pushing it. But as of today, we finally do have a VIN number.
Yeah.
So, I guess there's been no correspondence of a complaint against me against the company, so that's a good thing. So, not yet. So basically, the problem where we are right now is we're at a standpoint right now where you're not gonna get your 21 chassis. So that's old news. That's already gone. Back then, we paid 271. We're at right now 281, basically a 22 chassis. Is gonna cost you, back then was $56,000, 657, a 2024 chassis, 67,483. And I will tell you, so the cost difference is around $10,000, and that is after my cuts that I never even first initially even thought of walking into the boss's office of what they wanted to place on a newer ambulance, just because of our typical vehicles and all the new stuff that's coming out with bells and whistles. I said no to the bells and whistles, and we probably cut between myself and a couple of my people worked on it. We probably cut probably $5,000 to $8,000 to $9,000, probably about $9,000 out of it. I don't need the bells and whistles that they want to offer. So we cut that out. We're at $10,000. It's out of my control. I did go to permissions to say that I went to Lisa as far as what's in the ambulance. So we did go to Lisa to sit down with her before we came up with the agenda. And I believe Lisa's on the phone. She can correct me if I'm wrong or not, but I believe there was 500, I forget what her email was, but I think there's $576,000 out of ambulance reserve. The money that comes out is basically, it comes out of our, every time we replace our ambulances, comes out of our ambulance reserve. That's money that's generated through our various funding sources. So typically we program those ambulances every 5 years. And I know we've had discussions as far as where I'm placing my ambulances as far as the next few years. I still can't guarantee you to say the next ambulance you go to order is gonna take another 2 to 3 years. What I got today was ambulance will be in there. Start assembly line. They'll have it into the factory with the new chassis, everything else by June 17th. By then, it'll take 45 days to 60 days to finish mounting the body on the ambulance, the rest of the stuff. That'll be shipped back here. And I'm already trying to make dates to get it into the radio vendor and everything else wise to take the old stuff out of the old ambulance and put that stuff in there. So we're basically short $10,000 as far as the ambulance. But I will make a statement that if right now you placed and said, no, you don't want to do it, and you want to buy a new 2024 chassis and order a new one, you're at 356, 436. If you wait, obviously, for the next couple of years, and we use the percentages, and the next usually annual, compounded annually in the 3 years, your next ambulance will cost you around 437.
So, go ahead.
Lisa, can you kind of explain this $10,000 ask and where it's coming from and the effect on the funds and such?
Yes, we have an ambulance reserve fund. Those funds come from various sources, for medical calls as well as fire inspections, things like that, by the fire marshal. We have an overall plan in our capital plan, how those funds are to be used to help replace ambulance in the future. And we've also used it for other things that it was never really intended to be used for over the years, such as fire gear and things like that. But we incorporate the use of those funds into our 5-year capital plan. There are funds available, certainly for this small amount of money, although it's not a small number. The fund could certainly absorb it, in addition to what the plans are for use over the next 5 years.
Thanks, Lisa.
You need anything else?
One other thing, Chair, the process is kind of when, John finds out a number, he'll come to my office, after he absorbs, my consternation again, about that, you know, we go to Lisa and he'll make cuts. It's usually the first thing I'll, you know, but we'll double check on the necessity, triple check, and then we go to Lisa, and that was, the process here as well.
I've learned, made the company before I came.
Go ahead, Chris.
Just a quick question, Chief. I totally understand why we're here, given the years delay in getting the ambulance. So is the reason you're coming to us now because we have the VIN and so we know that the 2024 chassis or whatever year chassis we need, that's the one that we can order that, we'll have that, you won't, like, that's the number.
Yeah, that's the specs that we did in 2021, and
Okay.
basically, we didn't change anything else wise, it's just the it's the chassis issue.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Go ahead, you're the book, am I in trouble? No, you're not in trouble. You didn't throw the book at me? No, all right.
Well, it's exciting. You heard got the answer. We've got a VIN number. President asked earlier. We have it. Everybody knows my favorite word is ambulance. So it's, great, John, for your work and, you know, the $10,000 for a newer, like a 2024 doesn't seem too out of whack. And I know we're talking about this specifically, but you talked about no fancy bells and whistles, which we all can appreciate, but what is newer on this ambulance than what you had before? Is it, I know like,
Basically, the 2024 chassis that come out nowadays, they give you a specialized key fob, there's Wi-Fi, there's like the OnStar type of stuff,
Yeah.
and that was like pretty much a $8,000 option, the whole 9 yards, but I'm like, okay, so do you provide the service, the annual service of that? Cause that usually,
right,
it usually expires after you buy a new vehicle. I said, we don't need that, cause I'm not gonna put that into my pipe, I mean, we're gonna do. So we have iPads, we have stuff in the ambulance, why
Yeah.
duplicate the process or have two of the same things that are already doing it?
right, okay, so,
My staff felt very comfortable saying, yeah, we already have the iPads, we have the Wi-Fi, like, we know where the ambulance, we know where the stuff is, why we're gonna have two systems, doesn't make sense.
appreciate that. And then when we do finally get this first ambulance out of the two, is the plan to sell one of?
Donate it to you, park it on your driveway.
Thank you. I have to pay taxes. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
Brian's like, yes, you can have it, but seriously.
Seriously, those ambulances, back when we did them, they were built on heavy duty chassis. Basically, that ambulance will become the next service truck and that's what
Okay,
we'll
that's great.
offload. We'll offload that other service truck. It's already designed for it. Basically, the bed's already bought for that vehicle as well. It's been sitting at Eastford for the last 2-3 years, so. You
That's
know,
great, I apologize.
that's a done deal. You'll end up getting a heavy duty service truck, end up replacing something and don't have to throw another service truck in the budget.
But do you sell the box part or just keep the chassis?
There's no value to it.
Okay,
Usually most of those ambulances, the last one I sold, I think we got $1,650 on GovDebt deals or something. So that's why we designed those ambulances, because everyone's like, why did you design such a heavy? Well, that's gonna end up becoming a heavy duty service truck. And that'll relocate to the other station and the old flatbed will go bye-bye.
okay, perfect, thank you.
The ambulance budget?
Yeah. I've spent way too much time in the back of the Tolland ambulance.
You good?
So probably the reason why they have to get a new one.
No. Probably not.
I didn't say that.
Probably not. What? Okay, so
Spare one.
there was, Lisa, I have a question for you about the ambulance reserve fund. Do we have a written policy on the ambulance reserve fund? How about this? Let me
No,
read-
there's no, let's put it this way, as long as I've worked here, I could not find a formal written policy. I know there was something from many years ago when it was started with town council minutes, things like that. We've done a lot of research to see what we could find. But there's no actual written formal ordinance or anything like that that I can find. However, we do have in our audit report and all that, it's kind of outlined as to what it can be used for and what it's been over the years since I've been there anyway.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So I just wanna, it's a little late and I got sidetracked on when you started talking about bells and whistles and I was thinking about sirens. Anyway, just wanna make sure I understand that right now we're expecting to have a new ambulance come in the fall, this ambulance.
That ambulance should be at the factories on June 17th, I think it said.
And then
About
45 days.
45 to 60 days after that, it'll be delivered.
So,
But then there's an inspection or anything like that after?
So basically, once it comes back, I put all the radios, the lights in it. I have to get a OEMS inspection with the healthcare sticker before I can even register it. So the only thing I can end up doing is put in insurance by the time it gets delivered here. And now with all the new DMV laws that have changed, you can't swap plates and can't use.
so like September, October is realistic time when this ambulance would be, usable as an
I'm
ambulance.
still pushing,
Okay,
you know what I mean? It's,
thank you. I really appreciate it. This is the first time we've ever had a time frame in many years, so it's very exciting.
I know, we're very excited.
I'm very excited to have a time frame. So thank you very much for your diligence on this. I know I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask the question anyway. This is the first of 2 ambulances we have on order.
yes, ma'am.
So, should we expect a similar, cost adjustment when the second ambulance is ready to go into production?
Yes, ma'am.
That sounds great. Thank you.
We tried to, like I said, with the other ambulances, the problem is we tried to buy the stretchers and the rest of it.
Yes.
So that's why
I-
I don't know what those prices are for like one item or something in that second ambulance coming down the pike. And I got the locked in,
You
but
have been doing a phenomenal job on the ambulances, and I have nothing but appreciation
between
for
this and the
all the
squads
work.
and the firehouse, I can't keep track of where I'm going. We had a lot of projects.
Well, you're doing great. I hope you don't get lost. So thank you.
Getting close.
We need to make a motion here, right? We need to approve the resolution as outlined in 8.3. Is there a motion to do that? Jen made the motion. Is there a second? No, I'll second. Colleen is enthusiastically seconding. Is there any further discussion about the resolution in 8.3 to authorize this $10,826 from the ambulance reserve fund? No, so we'll do a roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Colleen? Aye. I am also an aye, so that passes unanimously. Please buy us a good ambulance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so now item 9 is new business, of which we have none. Item 10 is Brian's time to give us a report of the town manager.
Great, thanks. Let's start out with the state police, the MOU. I had some contact with DESP. Not a lot of movement there, but the timing works out well with the budget and everything. But also in that regard, I had an email exchange with the Troop C commander, updating as to that status as well. I met with some troopers today at the new dispensary across from Big Y there, along with our fire marshal, and we met the owners and they gave us a tour, very similar to the one in West Hartford, but it would be state police to get familiar with the area and comfortable and have a good understanding of it. As far as the ADA walkway on the green, that's making its way through the legal process. I've been working closely with our registrars on and DPW and our IT folks on election security and cameras and planning for the upcoming election to make sure Tolland is not exposed in any way, doing anything that we just want to make sure that we're completely professional and have the confidence of the town. As far as the building department, Jim Paquin has really been stepping up to help me in a lot of regards, in regards to some of our building projects beyond his usual field of expertise. We're also looking at some regionalization. Jim and I met this week to consider, sharing his services, obviously with another town for, a cost. But a way to bring in some revenue and also get him, he's in comparison to other building inspectors, below the average, I'd say, and we've done some research on that. So, moving forward, and very, very, glad to have him aboard, and I'm sure Colleen would echo that, to have him keeping an eye on our building projects, is fantastic. The library, I'm happy that was our last opening, and thank you, council, for tonight, and we'll be moving forward with a new library director, soon. As far as economic development, again, with the dispensary, the dispensary is moving quickly, in like April quickly, is where we're looking at, and our building department is working with them too, to make sure that's smooth. We have a ribbon cutting. I'll try to get, council the information. It's, I believe, next week or the week after at Carmen's Banquet Facility, the old Italian club down on Winterberry Avenue. It's gonna be like a new banquet facility, redo the whole building. A lot of work by our fire marshal getting in there to really change the usage of it, and our building inspector were down there, regularly for that. The firehouse is, I encourage you to take a drive by on Garing. It's coming along well. I thank, our chair. The meeting last night, went very well, and we're moving along. It's been a learning process for everybody, that's for sure, but, it's going well. While we're on it, working with DPW, I've been texting John, and Scott, during this meeting on this, because I'm starting to see, some signs of the storm, the coming, starting to kick up a little bit. We're prepared should anything happen. It really, Eversource put out some stuff. And, but there's a chance of snow later or in the earlier morning. So I kind of just touching base with Scott on that, but we should be in good shape. Scott's gonna be looking at getting the rink down, at some point. I think, I don't think we're gonna see a 5-day window or 4-day of temperatures entirely below 32 degrees at this point. I'm happy that we got the 5 days out of it, that we had. It was, I'd say, successful. And you look at other towns that did not get theirs up and did not have a chance, to use it, and I'm happy that we did, and I thank them for the effort. I talked to Scott this week on a lot of topics. One is an early spring Crandall's, to make some generally appearance improvements in Crandall's. The same way we're gonna open the school, we'll go out there and hit everything pretty hard. We're gonna have the camps and the beach out area open. We're really trying to turn that into the center that it was, for so many of us in the 80s and 90s when we were kids, wink, 70s. But a lot of work there, a lot of the weeds in the pond. We bought a tool to take care of some of that in the swimming areas. We'll look to get the dock back out there. We really had fallen out, not by anyone's fault currently, is here in our staff. So our staff is positive, we're doing positive things to move forward there. That's all I have. Chair, if you have some questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Jen, go ahead.
Have you received a permit yet for the Memorial Day parade? Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Could you just give us an update on the status of the permit?
Signed and good to go,
Okay, that's all I need to hear.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. And a pancake breakfast on the green too, the Lions Club, right?
Nice,
Signs as well, yes.
lovely.
I just have one question.
Yes, please.
You briefly mentioned the MOU, Brian, but I think when we had the presentation from, Trip C, it was mentioned that regardless of the MOU, we would be getting some data. Have we started receiving any data from the state police as far as our crime statistics that we're looking to get?
No, that would come from the administrative trooper or the sergeant, whichever we decide, and we don't have that. We have a temporary one now. I don't know if he has the wherewithal to run next gen and start pumping that, out for us or create. So we don't want to train somebody and then in 2 months flip it and to go to someone else.
So we're not expecting that until we get we feel that.
Yeah.
Permit is got it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
I'm good. Thank you, Brian.
Joe, you have any questions for Brian? Good.
No, all set.
Okay. Thank you for all that information. Next on our agenda is, here we go, adoption of minutes. We have minutes in our packet. for our February sixth, 2024 special meeting, our February 8th, 2024 capital budget public hearing, and our February 13th, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jen. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Any questions, comments, requested changes? No? Okay, so we will do the roll call vote on these 3 minutes. Joe?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Colleen? Aye. I'm also an aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Colleen, it's your turn to talk to us about correspondence to council.
Sure, so we got a few emails over the last week or so, let me see. Sure, here, so we got an email concerning, Board of Ed Town Council leadership meeting, should be more transparent. Email regarding use of tax stabilization, town's fund balance, and concern of town council and Board of Ed leadership meetings. Email from the chair of the Commission with People with Disability, thanking the town council for the efforts being made across Tolland for ADA. And email regarding a resident interested in being on the historic district. Joe and you guys saw that email, okay. Email regarding an e-blast from the town for the joint meeting last week. I'm not sure if it actually went out. I guess somebody was concerned that it didn't go out or something. Email supporting the Board of Ed 6.35% increase. Email concerning with historic district leadership. Email support Board of Ed and concern with leadership behavior with the historic district. Email regarding recordings, that the recordings, you know, you have to download the recordings now. I think that's not very clear. So there was a concern that the whole recording was not there. Email regarding how much funds are in the different accounts. And question on use of, I think that's all of them.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the chairperson's report. I just wanted to say my next chair hour is next Thursday, March 7th, 6:30 in the library. I forget who's joining me. I'm sorry, I have that in a different, no, is it Susan Lucic is joining me? I know I have at least one chair of a different board or commission who's joining me, and that will go out. I owe that to, this is my notation in my head. I owe that to Sarah Beth and Ann. I will get you that information so we can properly notice that. I wanted to thank the council and all the staff, and the Board of Ed and all the Board of Ed staff who made our joint meeting last week possible. I thought it was a successful meeting to learn about the Board of Ed budget and to understand their support of the budget that passed the Board of Ed. And I think that's it for me. Next on the agenda is communications and petitions from council persons. This is your opportunity to talk. Do you got something to say? Nobody wants to talk. Okay. Done. Nobody wants to talk. Okay, so we will go on to public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council with a 3-minute limit. As we do, we go back and forth between the town, the room and the Zoom. And if you're on Zoom and you want to speak, you can raise your Zoom hand. We ask you to give us your name and your address. And we'll start on Zoom because Claudette jumped in with her hand. So go ahead, Claudette.
Mike, can you unmute Claudette?
I asked her to.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Claudette Morehouse, 89 Merlot Way. Excuse me. Is there any way that we can get the sprinkler system outside of Town Hall repaired? That's the biggest adoptive spot I believe that there is. And since they took down all the ash trees, there's no shade there. And the dog days of summers just seem to burn everything. And myself and Deb Getz, we've been carting water daily. And since my water is non-potable, I think I'm killing them, the plants, rather than helping them. So I've asked for the last 4 years about the sprinkler system, and I've gotten nowhere. It's there, it's just not working. And I was wondering if it can be working for the summer coming up. Like I said, we have to haul water by jugs from our homes, and my water is not any good. So it's basically up to Deb Getz to haul all the water.
Happy to look into that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, like I said, I've asked for the last 4 years, and that's the answer I got. We'll look into it, and it's still not working. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak?
Above me.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, George Ulrich, Fishing Game Road, that's for you, Lisa. On the ambulance, I'm glad we're finally getting an ambulance. They had 21 and it takes 24 to get. So I would assume the 22 is gonna take the 25, so we really should be looking into maybe by 25 of ordering another one. I see no real improvement. I don't know if that stuff's gonna get better. On the other stuff, as far as I understand all this stuff very well, but it seems like we have a surplus of, or we need to have a surplus of 8% in one fund and 8.5% in another fund. And we also have a $1 million surplus. I understand that's in a school fund, or if I'm understanding it correctly. I just wonder if anybody realizes this is all taxpayers' money. Do we really need? Should we be tapping some of that $1 million fund? It's nice to get interest on it, but should we be using that to help control our budget? That's just my point. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Is there someone on Zoom? I'm sorry, I saw a hand go up and then come back down. Okay, oh. Jody Coleman Marziello. Go ahead, Jody.
Thank you. Jody Coleman Marziello, 79 Tolland Green. I just wanted to say that I attended the wake last night of Joel Padavino, who was our custodian at the Tolland Middle School for over 20 plus years. And he was such a nice person. And when we were talking about the healthcare insurance plan, Joel, I'm sure, was on our healthcare plan, and he unfortunately died of ALS, which is a costly, debilitating disease, as we all know. And I just wanted to say that I think it would be nice to respect the fact that his funeral is today and that he should be remembered. But I also wanted to talk about the needs and the wants of the town right now. And it sounds to me, from what I've been hearing about the contaminated well water that we've been going on for over 8 years, is a definite need. It sounds to me like Claudette Morehouse has been suffering, and Sean Lappin has been suffering, and we are allocating $400,000 for a sidewalk on the green, which is more of a want than a need. And I feel that people having the ability to have drinking water from their faucet, to be able to fill their water bottles if they're trying to drink and hydrate or do intermittent fasting or anything like that, is more important than a want. And 8 years is long enough to have to deal with the fact that you cannot drink the water that you get from your kitchen faucet, and you feel like you're endangering yourself and possibly increasing our insurance needs if they're a town employee by even just taking a shower. So I would like the town council to consider these actions and look at what is wanted and what is actually needed as far as the budget goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? Sean.
John Lappin, 168 Mountain Spring Road. Hello, Town Council. I see that one resident tonight seems to be getting answers when it comes to their questions of the town and how it operates. Myself and others, though, have been dealing with this contaminated water-free issues that the town has caused, we still have not gotten an answer. Outside of a few brief comments from the road salt task force meeting from the chair, I did not hear much in relation to road salt and the mitigation efforts of the town. I heard the chairperson's comment on how there is hope that the road salt task force will engage with the public in the near future. This was with an ask of former councilperson Nuccio several months ago, and my hope is that it will soon be realized in the near future. I had previously stated my willingness to be a part of the task force, and I still feel strongly about being part of that group. That being said, this process needs to move along. It has been too long, and there have been multiple lengthy delays in years that should not have happened. Thank you.
Is there anyone else online who would like to speak? Anyone else in the room?
Evening, I guess it's the evening. Dennis Deegan, 689 Tolland Stage Road. Just kind of curious about how things proceed with the government here. We have a gentleman who has a water issue, had a water issue forever. How does accountability work in the town of Tolland in terms of when someone has an issue? I would think, I mean, I always grew up knowing or being told that government's number one role was in fact to have a town that's safe for all its residents, which covers a lot of different areas. I would think drinking water is one of them. So how does that work? How does something like that go on so long? I can't believe this gentleman's patience. I happened to be here last meeting, I think I went to was a while ago, dealing with the sidewalk on the town green. And I happened to run into him at Big Y after that, and I said, I can't believe the patience you have. This gentleman is so patient. I can't believe it. You don't deserve that, candidly. You really don't deserve that patience. So how does this item, when you look at your priority list for your government here, our government here, in terms of the council and in terms of the town manager, where does that fall on the priority list about getting done and being addressed? I guess that's one question. So is there any kind of a list of priorities and what you actually look to address and what you look to accomplish of, citizens' needs in this town with respect to that? And I guess my other comment is, this is the first opportunity I've had to, I haven't made it to a Board of Ed meeting yet, but I had the opportunity to listen to Dr. Willis tonight. And I gotta say, from my perspective, you are pretty lucky in terms of not only the insurance folks that are involved here, but to have Dr. Willett, who seems to have a real good handle on what's going on with expenses. And quite honestly, what they have done from my perspective, I have 35 years in the insurance industry, so I get what goes on from an insurance standpoint. And the fact that the decisions that I heard tonight and that were made were perfect in terms of actually running a sound business. Okay, that's what you would do when you're running a sound business. Now, I understand individuals like to make sure their taxes don't go up any higher. We all do that. But we shouldn't confuse the fact that what reserves is not surplus. Okay, so when something gets put into a reserve, it means that it's there. Part of it was talked about IBNR, meaning that claims that aren't reported yet. So it's not a surplus. It's something that's there to stabilize results over time. So I think it was great to be here. It was a benefit I wasn't expecting. But I think it's good to know that at least from the Board of Ed standpoint, that things seem to be running pretty well with respect to how they're looking at those things. And as a substitute teacher in this town, in the high school, I would say that my observation, and I spent some of the last 10 years here and some in St. Petersburg, Florida. And one of the most important things in terms of the education of everyone's children, mine are old, they're gone at this point, I would say is class size. Okay, that's number one on the list. And so I would think, from my observation, at least in the high school, I don't see an abundance of teachers. If anything, I see class sizes sometimes running into the mid-20s, which quite honestly is high. Okay, if you really want your kids to be educated well, and everyone's children are different, right? We all are different. We all get certain subjects. We all handle ourselves differently in class. But the best way to basically educate students in an environment is not to let your class sizes go through the roof. And quite honestly, there's some classes that are up at 25 and there's some that fall below that, but that's because of how it all works. And if you ever sat in a class where there's 15 to 20 versus 25 and see the dynamics that go on in a classroom, I think he'd be shocked. So I think that obviously everyone's trying to control budgets and that sort of thing. But the fact is, if you have the ability, because of your trending of losses, which I was trying to come up with a good analogy to try to help everyone understand how the insurance game works. Shouldn't call it a game, how it works. That in fact, it's not a science, okay? We have actuaries, it's called actuarial science, but there's no definitive, okay? It's like the unknown of the world tomorrow. We don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. In the insurance world, like everything else, depends on trends. So at any rate, I gotta come back to accountability. Where does accountability fall when you have residents in this town who just can't get answers and results? I'm curious. How does that work?
This is not a Q&A, so thank you very much.
Oh,
for
so
your
when
comments.
do you ever give answers? Seriously, I'm not trying to be fresh. Are answers ever given, or you just listen and then ignore stuff or it goes away or whatever?
You've taken up
Okay,
well more than.
all
your
right, good
time,
night.
So thank you.
Well,
very
I've
much.
sat here listening to all of you get educated in the insurance business for 2 hours. So I'm sorry that I took longer than I should.
Can I say something?
If we're gonna see if there's any other public comment, because that's where we are on the agenda. Is there anyone else who has public comment? Apparently, we have some people who want to speak for the second time. So before we go to the second time, go ahead, Colleen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to say something earlier too, when the woman from the senior center were here too, but I was told they had to wait, so I missed my opportunity at petitions. First, I'll go back to that. I'm glad that the senior center is thriving. It's great to hear. And thank you, Brian. You mentioned that you have been putting it up so everybody knows. I like to use the word accountability. I believe as elected officials, we are accountable. We do have that committee that is being run. I really strongly believe too that residents that have issues should be on that. I don't know when that's gonna start, unfortunately. So Scott, I am truly, truly sorry. And the gentleman behind you is right. Your patience and you come in every meeting and residents should be able to have a response back. So thank you for challenging us. And thank you for giving me a quick, simple overview of insurance. So thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have two hands up online. I think Jody was first.
Thank you, Katie. I just wanted to add to what Dennis had mentioned. I am also an employee of the Tolland Board of Education, and I've been an employee of the Tolland Board of Education for 17 consecutive years. And I currently work at the high school, and there are classes that I am in that have 28 kids, and there's another class that I'm currently in that has 27 kids. And when he referenced it gets hot in there, it definitely gets hot in there. Football players are hot. And with the budget going forward, I listened to the joint meeting the other night in its entirety, and I was able to download the video. Thank you very much, Colleen, for telling me I had to download it. But I just wanted to say that with the decrease in the class, eliminating the teachers is going to increase the class size. So I'm already at 28, and I know there's a cap that there can't be more than a certain amount, and 27 is another class that I'm in. And this, by increasing the class sizes, you're also increasing the work that the paraprofessionals have to do. I happen to be a special education paraprofessional, and I'm curious as to the amount of students coming in. Perhaps I should have asked this question last Thursday night, but who in the 8th grade class that is coming into the high school has a 504 or an IEP? And those people, an IEP stands for Individualized Educational Plan, and that's due to academic restrictions or academic disabilities such as dyslexia or dysgraphia or certain things that will limit the their academic abilities. And there's 504s that are usually medically, a medical problem, such as a concussion or an autoimmune disease or a broken leg or something to that. So in one of the classes that I'm in, 46% of the students have either an IEP or a 504, which mean they receive modifications and accommodations, which require a paraprofessional, who is myself, as well as my others, to assist with these, such as like a alternate test setting, modified length of tests and assignments, reduced multiple choice answers, and students with dyslexia have the opportunity for somebody to read the entire exam, read the questions, and then you get to evaluate their answers, and they have the ability to verbally respond also, or orally respond. So you may, if you know a student knows the answer to this question, but the verbiage was confusing to them, or they mixed it up, which I am also a person who has dyslexia, and a lot of times I mix things up and say things backwards. And I have to read things 3 times sometimes, just because I'll take the 2 out of 3, like 3 strikes you're out kind of whatever, to make sure that I understand what the question is actually asking me. But it just takes a lot more time, is what I'm trying to say, and that you're putting it's going to be more difficult, is what I'm saying. I guess the smaller the classes, the less help the teachers are able to help the students better on a one-on-one basis and make sure they're all in check. And the bigger the class size, the more difficult it is all I'm saying. But thank you very much for letting me have the opportunity to talk again.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the room? No, okay, Claudette, go ahead.
Hi, Claudette Morehouse, 89 Merlot Way. I appreciate the 2 people that spoke up regarding the well water. As far as the accountability goes, this has been going on too long. I don't know if patience is a good word to use, but we're at, the mercy of the town. And as far as accountability goes, we have provided more than sufficient information that there is road salt in our water. So someone has to own it before they can fix it. And I don't believe the town wants to own it. There's been a lot of back and forth, 6 years of nonstop testing. And now we're going around, I think it's round 4 or 5 of testing. And I don't know what more you can do other than testing. And all that does is prolong another year of no potable water. It's like someone on oxygen and their tanks are running low. We don't have water. We don't have, a lot to, use it. I mean, we can't. Our plumbing is shit. It's costing me, money every month to get plumbing fixed. I know the only way to to fix this is to bring in public water. And I know that's got a big high ticket price that the town don't even want to blink at. I get it. But in the meantime, I'm spending thousands of dollars since this all happened out of my pocket to fix all the plumbing that this water has caused. So at what point is enough testing, and when are we going to get a solution? Because I think sometimes patients are running thin. This has been going on for too long. And it's time that somebody takes accountability for it and owns it and fix it. Somebody needs to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this point? Anyone online? Okay. We are at item 16, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second. Thank you, Jen and Chris. Is there any objection to adjournment? Any objection Any objection? Without objection, then we are adjourned. Thank you.